Chapter 617. The heavenly Tao had no consciousness. It was just a law that ruled over everything. That pair of heavenly Tao eyes was just a manifestation of the heavenly tribulation to frighten his Tao heart. Soon the heavenly tribulation descended. Billions of bolts of purple lightning descended and violently struck Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji directly used World Overlord's heart technique, drawing on the power of heavenly law to suppress the surging saint energy in his body. He looked young and his cultivation breakthrough seemed to be too hasty, but his foundation was not unstable. As his cultivation level soared, his body was constantly being tempered. Moreover, his state of mind had already comprehended the edge of the great Tao, and everything that was happening before his eyes was a matter of course for him. The process of transcending the tribulation was extremely long. Zhou Xuanji did not hide his aura. He was not afraid of heavenly saints attacking. He even hoped that a heavenly saint would come. About 2 hours passed. He sensed two presences. They belonged to barbarian god Huangluo and Saint Juin. As expected, berserker god Huangluo does not harbor any good intentions. As Zhou Xuanji thought about this, the corner of his lips curled up. Just in time. It was just the right time to help him reach a higher level. Soon barbarian god Huangluo and Saint Juin appeared. They appeared on Zhou Xuanji's left and right, 10,000 meters away from him, looking at Zhou Xuanji from afar. Their gazes were incredibly complicated. They could not maintain their composure as heavenly saints. Zhou Xuanji did not speak, and waited for them to attack. After a while, barbarian god Huangluo said, "Zhou Xuanji, what do you want? Since you want to become an overlord saint, why don't you give up the 4 heavenly law violet qi?" Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and asked, "Since you are already a heavenly saint, why do you still need the heavenly law violet qi? What a joke! Why can you snatch it, but I can't take it?" Moreover, he had obtained the 4 heavenly law violet qi in a fair and just manner. So how could he possibly give them away? There are too many heavenly saints. We want to destroy these 4 strands of heavenly law violet energy. They are divided by us, and we control the heavenly law together. What do you think? Barbarian god Huangluo continued with a calm expression, as though he could not see that Zhou Xuanji was undergoing the tribulation. Saint Juin smiled faintly, but didn't say anything. For some reason, they did not give Zhou Xuanji the feeling that they were heavenly saints. Instead, they were demons who fought for power and profit. Was this the magnanimity of a heavenly saint? Zhou Xuanji's eyes were filled with disdain. A ray of golden light shone down from above and landed right in front of Zhou Xuanji. A figure emerged from within the golden light. It was Buddha Yongling Umitba. "Brother Zhou and I are old friends. I advise you to leave. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." Buddha Yongling's left hand formed a palm, and he placed it in front of his chest. His right hand was fiddling with the prayer beads. Barbarian god Huangluo and Saint Juin narrowed their eyes. What a crafty old bald donkey. He actually jumped out to show off. "Yongling, did you really think that he would join hands with you just like that? You're the main culprit behind old ancestor Hongshi's death," said Saint Juin with a strange smile. The moment he said that, Buddha Yongling's right hand stopped, and his expression became slightly unnatural. However, Zhou Xuanji's expression did not change. He remained silent, and focused on overcoming the tribulation. According to his estimations, he would soon become an overlord saint. Buddha Yongling stared at Saint Juin and said, "Our battles have already placed the heavenly Daos in a dangerous state. Why did Paragon Daojing leave? Do you think it's because he wants to pursue greater power? He's on the run." The reason why he came up with the plan to clear out the saints was not just for the sake of power. If he was the only heavenly saint, he would be able to help all creatures as he pleased and uphold the rules. The 3 heavenly saints started to bicker, wanting to stand at the peak of morality. Zhou Xuanji silently listened. The eye of heavenly law gradually disappeared into the thunderclouds. He could sense that his body and soul were going through changes. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached the overlord saint realm. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations! The sword owner has obtained the 9 Extreme 1000 Reincarnation Sword, Extreme Nightmare Abyss. The sword spirit's voice sounded out in Zhou Xuanji's mind, causing him to slightly frown. Why was it only a 9 Extreme Legendary Sword? He thought about it, and could not help but shake his head and laugh. He had been too greedy. Following this, his entire body started to ascend. Barbarian god Huangluo and Saint Juin's expression slightly changed, but they still did not attack Zhou Xuanji. Now that things had come to this, they understood that they could not stop Zhou Xuanji. As such, it was better to bury the hatchet. Buddha Yongling's gaze was somewhat complicated. This was because Zhou Xuanji's growth speed was simply too fast. Last time, the two of them had made an agreement in the Heaven Fiend realm. How long had it been? Zhou Xuanji had already surpassed him. He even suspected that he had been struck by some sort of illusory divine ability. This dream was simply too bizarre. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and looked at barbarian god Huangluo and Saint Juin as he said coldly, "You're still here. Looks like you're not afraid of death?" Saint Juin smiled as he said, "We're not forcing you. We've already lost 4 heavenly saints, and we cannot continue to lose them. You becoming an overlord saint is a good thing for us. You can do whatever you want with the heavenly law violet chi. However, there's a very powerful enemy outside the heavenly law. Before, even the 8 of us saints working together were not a match for him. An enemy outside the heavenly law?" Zhou Xuanji immediately thought of the primordial ancestors' enemy. That sort of existence was indeed something that heavenly saints could not defeat. Ever since we started cultivating, who hasn't had enmity or grievances? We didn't have any great enmity before. And you've already reached the saint realm. So you're in existence on the same level as us. As a saint of the heavenly law, we naturally have to fight together, barbarian god Huangluo said, a calm smile on his face, not worried at all that Zhou Xuanji would suddenly attack. Zhou Xuanji took out the thunderclap sword and smiled as he said, "Each of you receive a sword strike from me as an apology. One of my seniors died because of you. No matter if it's life or death, our enmity will be written off." His smile was incredibly dangerous, making it so that barbarian god Huangluo and Saint Juin could no longer smile. Buddha Yongling sighed softly. This boy was truly someone who would take revenge for the smallest grievance. Fortunately, he had not offended him back then. He was quite curious to see if barbarian god Huangluo and Saint Juin would be able to receive a sword strike from Zhou Xuanji. Since it's like this, how can we refuse? Come. Barbarian god Huangluo loudly laughed as 2 azure dragons wrapped around his majestic body. He raised his aura to the peak. Saint Juin's expression was gloomy, and he could only nod. He was on guard, preparing to face Zhou Xuanji's sword. At that moment, Zhou Xuanji suddenly moved, turning and rushing towards Saint Juin. He slashed out, and sword Dao rules exploded out. Saint Juin raised his arms to block. Boom! Sword light flashed as sword chi swept out. Saint Juin instantly exploded, and his soul dissipated. Only a trace of heavenly law violet chi remained, struggling at death's door. Sword chi swept out, tearing apart the universe's space. Barbarian god Huangluo and Buddha Yongling stared with wide eyes. How was this possible? The 2 saints were dumbfounded, especially barbarian god Huangluo. His body trembled, and an unprecedented sense of fear flooded into his heart, making it impossible for him to remain calm. That was Saint Juin. Even among heavenly saints, he was in existence with above-average strength. And yet, he had been instantly killed by Zhou Xuanji with a single strike. Impossible, he just broke through. Barbarian god Huangluo's body trembled, feeling despair in his heart. He could not believe his eyes. I have countless swords. Chapter 618. After killing Saint Juin, Zhou Xuanji once again absorbed a boundless wave of saint energy. He suppressed the saint energy within his body, while also collecting Saint Juin's heavenly law violet chi. At this point, he had 5 strands of heavenly Dao violet chi in hand, which was enough to change the heavenly Dao. He shifted his gaze towards barbarian god Huangluo and said with a smile, "Are you ready?" Barbarian god Huangluo was drenched in cold sweat. He did not know how to reply. Seeing his expression, Zhou Xuanji felt incredibly pleased. Weren't you all high and mighty before? If you kill us, how will you face the powerful enemies from beyond the heavens? Barbarian god Huangluo took a deep breath and tried to calm his emotions. The impact of that sword strike just now was too great. His limbs were trembling slightly. He was a heavenly saint. How could he be so unbearable? The longer you live, the more you don't want to die. That was how barbarian god Huangluo felt at the moment. Buddha Yongling hovered in the distance. He didn't interrupt and just watched quietly. Looking at Zhou Xuanji, he remembered the mighty figure of the previous overlord saint. An overlord saint is a true saint. A heavenly saint is just a puppet that borrows the power of the heavenly law. Buddha Yongling smiled bitterly with a desolate expression. He suddenly understood that even if he was the only heavenly saint left, he would not be a match for Zhou Xuanji with the power of heavenly law. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji did not speak, barbarian god Huangluo became even more terrified. He did not even dare to run away, because Zhou Xuanji's sword was just too fast. Saint Juin didn't even have time to defend himself. If he had turned around, he would have died without a doubt. Zhou Xuanji divided the saint energy among the 4 demon god clones, causing them to come closer and closer to the overlord saint. This broken universe fell into silence. Buddha Yongling did not dare to make a sound, causing barbarian god Huangluo to be tormented. He did not know when Zhou Xuanji would attack. Even as a heavenly saint, he could not endure this kind of fear. He gritted his teeth and knelt down in the air. He cupped his fists towards Zhou Xuanji and said, "I'm willing to submit to you and serve you. Can you spare my life?" Buddha Yongling's eyes widened as he looked at him in disbelief. The arrogant barbarian god Huangluo actually knelt down? Zhou Xuanji looked at him and asked expressionlessly, "How can I trust you?" Barbarian god Huangluo deeply breathed in and flipped his right hand. A golden bell appeared in his hand, and he sent it to Zhou Xuanji with his saint energy. This treasure is known as the 9 extreme bell of heaven and earth. It is an ultimate treasure of the heavenly Tao. With a single ring, the souls of all living beings will be captivated. With 2 rings, the heavenly saint will be in a trance. With 3 rings, it can destroy billions of souls. Barbarian god Huangluo said with a complicated tone. This was his strongest magic treasure. Buddha Yongling followed and said, "What he said is true." Zhou Xuanji found that this fellow had already erased the worldly 9 extreme bell's soul imprint. This bell was now ownerless. Barbarian god Huangluo was very sincere. Facing the threat of death, he could only compromise. "Yes, from now on, you'll be my sword slave. What do you think?" Zhou Xuanji said calmly. Barbarian god Huangluo's eyelids twitched, but he did not dare to refuse. And now, Zhou Xuanji had subdued a heavenly saint sword slave. Buddha Yongling was essentially one of his subordinates. Even though he hadn't officially said it, judging from Buddha Yongling's actions, it was clear that he had already made his choice. Apart from them, there were only 2 heavenly saints that he had not seen before. One was Sheng Tiandao, the strongest heavenly saint. The other was Phoenix Lord Tianqi, an extremely low-key heavenly saint. It was not an exaggeration to say that Zhou Xuanji had reached the peak of the heavenly law. Even Sheng Tiandao was not someone he placed in his eyes. However, he did not relax. His target was destiny. After a while, Zhou Xuanji completely absorbed Saint Juin's cultivation. He slowly got up and said, "Do heavenly saints live above the 36th heaven?" Buddha Yongling shook his head and said, "The 36th heaven you speak of is where the heavenly law is." Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji became even more curious. He suddenly thought of Sovereign Xian. That fellow was not even a heavenly saint. How could he dare to go to the 36th heaven? "Do you know Sovereign Xian?" Zhou Xuanji asked. Under the sword fusion technique, Sovereign Xian could communicate with him. "Oi, oi, oi, don't expose me." Sovereign Xian called out discontentedly, feeling quite flustered and exasperated. Tao Lord Xiantian laughed mockingly and said, "Little brother, why are you so nervous?" The words they used were all learned from Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji often said some strange words, and they felt that they were interesting, so they often used them. "Sovereign Xian, that fellow is an incredible existence, the one closest to an overlord saint. He lives in seclusion in the Wanshan Great Thousand. Before, he sought death and went to the 36th heaven, but he never came back. He's most likely dead." Buddha Yongling said as he shook his head and smiled. His tone was filled with mockery, and hearing this, Sovereign Xian almost exploded in anger. Barbarian god Huangluo flew over to Zhou Xuanji and said, "Master, why don't you open up a preaching site in the 35th heaven? His attitude changed very quickly. Now that he was following Zhou Xuanji, he would not have to fear Sheng Tiandao anymore. Buddha Yongling had not left yet. He definitely had the same thought. Zhou Xuanji lightly nodded and followed the two heavenly saints to the 35th heaven. The 33rd heaven was the peak of the great thousand world, and the 34th heaven was the boundless starry sky of the universe. The 35th heaven was an even higher realm, and very few creatures could reach there. Before, when Zhou Xuanji had fought with Heavenly Lord Xiantai, he had broken through the barrier of the 35th heaven. On a massive floating island, figures stood in front of a tall mountain. Among them were Mo Jiuqing and Emperor Xia. It was the great Emperor Dao court. They all looked up, looking at a figure on the summit. Zhou Xuanji has already become an overlord saint and killed Heavenly Lord Xiantai, Yuxuanzong, and Saint Juin. Even barbarian god Huangluo and Buddha Yongling have submitted to him. A cold voice sounded out from the summit, causing the expressions of the great Emperor Dao court's experts to change. Mo Jiuqing was the most emotional. His body trembled as he said with a trembling voice, How did he do it? Thinking back to the first time he had seen Zhou Xuanji, what was that boy's cultivation back then? And now, Emperor Xia was also given a big fright. He had personally witnessed the Saint War before. Even though Zhou Xuanji had been powerful back then, he had not been this powerful. In other words, Zhou Xuanji had already surpassed all heavenly saints? Thinking back to the enmity between the great Emperor Dao court and Zhou Xuanji, everyone felt terrified. From now on, this seat can only ally with Sheng Tiandao. In the future, don't try to divine Zhou Xuanji, including everyone around him. The cold voice once again sounded out. He was Phoenix Lord Tianqi. He was the one who had created the great Emperor Dao court. Everyone was still in shock and terror, and they could not come back to their senses for a long time. At that moment, Phoenix Lord Tianqi's figure suddenly disappeared. Emperor Xia looked at Mo Jiuqing and sighed as he said, Your troubles have come. Back then, Mo Jiuqing had plotted against Zhou Xuanji. Mo Jiuqing's expression was complicated, and he did not know what to say. In the past, he had been very close to Zhou Xuanji. In the end, he had betrayed Zhou Xuanji and led all of his fellow apprentices into danger. Now, he could only hide in the great Emperor Dao court and did not dare to go out. Chapter 619. While Mo Jiuqing and Emperor Xia were feeling complicated, barbarian god Huangluo and Buddha Yongling led Zhou Xuanji to the 35th heaven. There was no earth here, only a majestic mist of spiritual qi. As far as the eye could see, there weren't even any stars. The 35th layer of heaven is very vast. You can establish a Dao field as you wish. Barbarian god Huangluo said in a respectful tone. He had already adjusted his state of mind. Zhou Xuanji asked, Where are Sheng Tiandao and Phoenix Lord Tiannan? He remembered a heavenly saint who called himself the heavenly ancestor and invited him to participate in the All Heavens Dao feast. Sheng Tiandao and Phoenix Lord Tianqi both had the word Tian in their names. Sheng Tiandao is probably cultivating in seclusion. As for immortal Lord Tianho, his whereabouts are a mystery. He has a special mystique that conceals his aura. No one knows what he's doing. At the mention of Sheng Tiandao, a strange look flashed across his eyes. Clearly, there was a story between the two saints. Zhou Xuanji asked no more, and began scanning the 35 heavens with his divine will. Soon, he discovered Heavenly Lord Xiantai, Grand Master Yuxian, and Saint Juin's Dao arenas. He immediately flew over. Heavenly Lord Xuantia's dojo had already been ransacked. As for who had done it, he did not ask. It had to be the remaining heavenly saints. He quickly went to Grandmaster Yuxian and Saint Juin's dojo and collected all of the resources there. Yuxian Sect's dojo was a group of palaces. They were luxurious and majestic, flickering with 7-colored holy light. Saint Juin's preaching site was a jet-black temple that was incredibly large. There were many ghosts standing guard, but they were all scattered by Zhou Xuanji's sword qi. Barbarian god Huang Luo and Buddha Yongling felt a wave of envy when they saw him plundering, but they didn't dare say anything. After doing all this, Zhou Xuanji smiled satisfactorily and said, All right, you can all go back. Remember, reduce fighting in the future and prioritize all living beings. barbarian god Huangluo and Buddha Yongling immediately bowed and left. Following beside Zhou Xuanji, the pressure was just too great. They were afraid that Zhou Xuanji would suddenly attack and take their lives. After they left, Zhou Xuanji sat cross-legged in the air and began to cultivate. The previous battle had almost depleted the magic power stored in the Tianxia map. He had to store it for a period of time, so that he could be prepared. He took out the 4 demon god avatars and let them cultivate together. After breaking through to the Overlord Saint realm, his control over his clones had become much stronger. Very soon, he would be able to channel the spiritual energy absorbed by the 4 clones into the Tianxia map. This would greatly increase the efficiency of his absorption of spiritual energy. After stabilizing his cultivation state, he took out the Kiliakosm Samsara sword to check. Sword name: Boundless Reincarnation Sword Level 9 Description: the Sword of Reincarnation can make all creatures under the Saint Realm fall into reincarnation. It can also break reincarnation. The user must be at the Saint Realm level 1 to use this sword. The Kiliakosm Reincarnation Sword was a black and white longsword. It had a metallic texture and was extremely heavy, as though it had been compressed from a great thousand world. Zhou Xuanji just happened to meet the requirement of level 1 of the Saint stage. The Sage realm was divided into 9 skies. 1 was the weakest and 9 was the strongest. Zhou Xuanji walked the path of an Overlord Saint. Even though he was only a level 1 Heavenly Saint, he was stronger than a level 5 Heavenly Saint. An Overlord Saint was on a completely different level from a Heavenly Saint. It could even be said that without the power of the Heavenly Law, a Heavenly Saint was a false saint. After looking at the Kiliakosm Samsara sword, Zhou Xuanji started to receive the Extreme Nightmare Abyss. The Extreme Nightmare Abyss was a type of dream divine ability. It could pull an enemy's consciousness into an illusion that one could create. In the illusion, one could give the enemy pain and even kill the enemy. Time in the Extreme Nightmare Abyss was almost completely still. No matter how much time passed inside, it would only be an instant in the real world. There were 2 ways to use the Extreme Nightmare Abyss. One was to physically or spiritually touch the enemy, and the other was to look at them from a distance. Zhou Xuanji was very satisfied with this divine ability. In battle, it would definitely be impossible to defend against. After learning the Extreme Nightmare Abyss, he began to focus on cultivating. At the same time, barbarian god Huangluo and Buddha Yongling spread the news of Saint Juin being killed by Zhou Xuanji to the various Great Thousand Worlds, building up support for Zhou Xuanji. In an instant, all sorts of legends about the Overlord Saint were dug up and spread throughout the various worlds. Zhou Xuanji had become the most powerful sword emperor in the heavenly law. In everyone's eyes, he was already the most powerful saint. Heavenly Lord Xiantai, Yishuanzong Saint Juin. He slew 3 heavenly saints consecutively, and had 5 heavenly law violet chi. Since ancient times, who could be as domineering as him? And just like that, Zhou Xuanji was deified. The title of Sword Emperor was deeply engraved in everyone's hearts. The Great Emperor steels in the various Great Thousand Worlds also underwent changes. Zhou Xuanji became the first. No one had any objections to this. Compared to him, the other names on the steels paled in comparison. After half a year of rest, Zhou Xuanji left the 4 demon god bodies in the 35th heaven to cultivate, while he returned to Wanshan Great Thousand and released the Divine Cliff. As for Emperor Sword Court, he asked around. If anyone wanted to survive in the Great Thousand Worlds, he could release them. Because Emperor Sword Court had many people, some disciples wanted to go out and have a look. So, Zhou Xuanji released them to train outside. After all this, he returned to the world in the lotus and expanded the world with his saint energy. The sky became higher and higher, and the land became vaster. Emperor Sword Court's disciples felt their blood boiling. Too powerful. I heard that Grand Teacher has become a saint. Can you feel it? The spiritual chi is growing. The spiritual chi here has already surpassed Wanshan Great Thousand. Luckily we didn't go out. The disciples discussed among themselves. The world in the lotus was vast. Zhou Xuanji allowed them to choose their own residence, but they were not allowed to fight with their peers for territory. If there were any disputes, They had to consult Emperor Sword Court, and the elders and deacons would decide. Xiao Jinghong and Zhao Tsongjian followed behind Zhou Xuanji. Looking at him using his saint energy, their eyes were filled with admiration. I have 5 heavenly law violet qi with me. You are benevolent and qualified to become a saint, but you are too weak. Later, I will temper your muscles and bones to increase your physical talent, Zhou Xuanji said casually. Zhou Xuanji said indifferently, right now, if he wanted to become more powerful, it would take countless years just by relying on cultivation. So, he turned his attention to his disciples. He wanted to help Emperor Sword Court become more powerful, so that he could lead them to a vaster universe. Xiao Jinghong shook his head and said, I don't want the heavenly law violet qi. I want to become an overlord saint like you. Zhao Tsongjian nodded. When they heard about Zhou Xuanji's process of killing a saint, their blood boiled with excitement. An overlord saint was really domineering. He could kill a heavenly saint with a single slash, right after becoming a saint. How could they not yearn for such power? Zhou Xuanji nodded with a smile and said, Tell Beixiao and Lianxin to work hard on cultivating as well. Strive to become a saint in the future. He had a lot of affection for his disciples and sword slaves who had followed him since the beginning. Back then, when they ran away together, even though they were in a sorry state, it was very heartwarming. Chapter 620. Finally, Zhou Xuanji expanded the Lotus world by dozens of times. He planted all the natural resources he obtained in every corner to produce spiritual qi for the Lotus world. To prevent his disciples from digging up these natural resources, he set up a defensive barrier. Once it was triggered, the plunderers would be repelled but not killed. After all this, Zhou Xuanji came to the heavenly hall and teleported Emperor Yan of Zhou out. In the forest, Emperor Yan of Zhou was shocked when he saw Zhou Xuanji. He thought that this brat was here to kill him. Zhou Xuanji was expressionless as he let out Lady Zhao Xian and Zhou Xiaoxian. Then he left the place. He did this for Lady Zhao Xian's wish. But he did not want to see Emperor Yan of Zhou, so he asked Zhou Xiaoxian to look after her. Zhou Xiaoxian was powerful enough to protect Lady Zhao Xian. You? How could you? Emperor Yan of Zhou opened his eyes wide and trembled. He could not believe his eyes. How could a dead person come back to life? It was possible if she had just died. But how many years had it been since Lady Zhao Xian died? Humph! It's him. Zhou Xiaoxian crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked at her grandfather with disdain. She knew about Zhou Xuanji's past a long time ago. She was pampered since she was young. She could not imagine how it felt to be hunted down by her own father. Just thinking about it made her feel suffocated. Emperor Yan of Zhou looked at Zhou Xiaoxian and fell into a daze. Because Zhou Xiaoxian was too similar to Lady Zhao Xian, just like sisters. But he heard a rumor that Zhou Xuanji had a daughter. Could it be? Emperor Yan of Zhou suddenly felt ashamed, and he wanted to find a hole in the ground to hide in. Lady Zhao Xian walked up to him with a complicated expression and pursed her lips. Emperor Yan of Zhou hesitated for a while before mustering up his courage and said, Xian or smack. Lady Zhao Xian slapped him. He did not dodge or retreat, but took the slap head on. This was what he deserved. He accepted it. At this moment a powerful gust came. Zhou Xiaoxian charged over and slapped him. This slap caused him to vomit blood. He was sent flying, crashing into a large tree and breaking it. Zhou Xiaoxian smiled proudly. Grandma, you are not strong enough. I can help you to make him suffer. Lady Zhao Xian was stunned and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Zhou Xuanji came to the old immortal's Taoist temple. The Taoist temple had already disappeared, and there were still traces of wooden stakes on the ground. The spiritual flowers planted not far away had already been surrounded by weeds. He sighed, feeling as if things had remained the same, but the people had changed. Now, in his heart, the old immortal was already his master, more important than the old beggar. When he was on the verge of despair, it was the old immortal who pointed out the right path for him and brought him hope. It was also the old immortal who helped him comprehend the Tao intent. In the end, the old immortal had died for him. Even though there was still hope of resurrection, every time he thought of it, he would feel a little depressed. Senior, wait for me in the Kunlun Origin Court, Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. He walked to the tree he used to stay under, and sat down against the trunk, feeling the breeze and all the details around him. That was how he had comprehended the Tao back then. Now that he had become an overlord saint, he had a different feeling when he calmed his mind. The world was very small. The universe was huge. Saint was very strong, but he was not strong enough to take in the entire universe. The rustling of grass in the wind was in front of his eyes, and beside his ears. He raised his head and gazed into the distant sky, lost in thought. He did not focus on one thing but emptied his mind. After a long while, a silhouette appeared beside him. It was Ren Niming. Congratulations. You have become an overlord saint, and surpassed all the saints in history. Ren Niming said with a smile. His eyes were even more passionate than before. Now he really felt hope from Zhou Xuanji. The hope to defeat destiny. Zhou Xuanji looked at him intently and asked, "When do I have the right to challenge destiny?" Destiny was like a blade hanging above his head. He could not ignore it. Although he was powerful, he was afraid that the people around him would be harmed by destiny. There's still a period of time. Destiny is something that can even toy with the heavenly saints. If you want to defeat him, you must at least be more powerful than all the heavenly saints. And not just by a little, Ren Niming said seriously. He was worried that Zhou Xuanji would become arrogant. Zhou Xuanji looked at him and asked, "After defeating destiny, do you want to become destiny?" A conscious rule was extremely horrifying, especially someone like Ren Niming, who had abundant emotions and was good at scheming. Ren Niming shook his head and said with a smile, "Since I'm no longer destiny, I will not go back. If you destroy destiny, a new destiny will be born. The karma will accelerate, but it will no longer have a consciousness. And I want to live for myself. Destiny is a rule that serves all living beings after all." His words were as flawless as ever. But Zhou Xuanji did not believe him completely. If he became destiny, why couldn't he live for himself? Next, I only need to become more powerful. Powerful enough to challenge destiny, right? He asked casually. After breaking through to the overlord saint, he planned to nurture his own Tao will. As for cultivation, he would leave it to the 4 demon god clones. He was so powerful not because of the overlord saint, but because of his Tao will. The power of the rule that surpassed the heavenly law. Ren Niming nodded and said, You can develop freely. You have 5 heavenly law violet chi anyway, which is enough to create a new heavenly saint era and prevent the heavenly law from collapsing." He did not make any comments on the heavenly law violet chi, but only mentioned it briefly. After that he left quickly. Zhou Xuanji continued to stabilize his mental state. A few hours later, he went to pick up Lady Zhao Xian and Zhou Shaoxian. In the forest, he did not see Emperor Yan of Zhou. Lady Zhao Xian decided to cut off all ties with Emperor Yan of Zhou. Emperor Yan of Zhou was a little unwilling to do so. He swore that one day, he would appear before Lady Zhao Xian with dignity. Just like back then in the northern wilderness region, his name shook the world. As the emperor of the empire, he married Lady Zhao Xian despite the empress' objection. Lady Zhao Xian only had Daoya Old Man as her backer. Back then, he was extremely glorious. But now, he could not even raise his head in front of Lady Zhao Xian. Then let him prove himself slowly. Zhou Xuanji smiled lightly and stored Lady Zhao Xian and Zhou Shaoxian into the lotus world before returning. Emperor Yan of Zhou's ambition was ignited, but he did not have much time left. Zhou Xuanji might leave the heavenly law universe with Lady Zhao Xian someday. At that time, it would be an eternal separation for Emperor Yan of Zhou. Returning to the Taoist temple, he continued to lean against the tree trunk to sense the heavens and earth and the universe's rules. He took out his legendary swords one after another. Many of his legendary swords had different powers. To him, after these powers were amplified, they would become different rules. For example, the Thunderclap sword, Great Thousand Reincarnation sword, and so on. What's the relationship between the Great Tao and the heavenly law? Zhou Xuanji suddenly thought of a question and fell into deep thought. I have countless legendary swords. I have countless legendary swords. Chapter 621. When Zhou Xuanji began to comprehend the Tao will, the Great Thousand Worlds gradually regained their stability. Although there were still fights, They were much more peaceful than before, when the heavenly saints were leading them. As such, many creatures said that it was the Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji who set the world. Barbarian god Huangluo and Buddha Yongling didn't dare to cause any trouble. Sheng Tiandao and Phoenix Lord Tianqi didn't make any moves either. The greater thousand worlds continued to develop. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 years passed. Zhou Xuanji had reached 500 years old, but he still sat in front of the forest and did not leave. Analyze that the sword owner has reached 500 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations. The sword owner has obtained glorious gold hidden saber sword. Primeval Chaos Grand Beginning Sword. Because Sword Master has obtained the first Primeval Divine Sword, the Divine Sword grades will be updated. When Sword Master leaves the Heavenly Law universe, the new Divine Sword grades will be announced. Hearing the Sword Spirit's voice, Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes. The primordial Divine Sword had finally appeared. There was actually an even higher grade of Divine Sword. He couldn't help but look forward to it. However, there was still a long time before he left the Heavenly Law universe. Then, the information of the Divine Sword appeared before his eyes. Sword name: Primal Chaos Sword level. Primeval description: a godly sword born at the beginning of chaos. It possesses the power of creation, creating something out of nothing and turning something rotten into something magical. One needs to be at least a 7th level Overlord Saint to use this sword. The power of creation. Overlord Saint level 7. Zhou Xuanji was amazed. How powerful was this sword? As for sword delivery, he was too lazy to check its information. In more than 100 years, he had obtained more than 300 godly swords, but the highest one was of the connecting heaven level. Fortunately, the sword spirit gave him a pleasant surprise when he was 500 years old. Now the number of his divine swords had already exceeded 1,000. He had taken a big step towards having 10,000 swords. His cultivation base did not improve much as it was still at Overlord Saint level 1. His will of the way had improved quite a bit. He had a deeper understanding of the Great Tao. The Great Tao was more advanced than the Heavenly Tao, and it was more inclusive than the Heavenly Tao. The Heavenly Tao was above all living beings. The Great Tao was higher than the Heavenly Tao, but it existed among all living beings. With the Tao in one's heart, the Tao would be there. This kind of belief was easy to say, but it was not easy to truly acknowledge the Tao by his side from the bottom of his heart. It was easy to deceive others, but difficult to deceive oneself, not to mention belief. As his understanding of Tao insight deepened, he felt even more reverence towards the Grand Tao, because he could feel the power of the Great Tao all around him. It was invisible and indestructible, just like the fish in the ocean marveling at the magic of the water. Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and stood up slowly. He stretched his back and body. The sun is so beautiful. He muttered to himself and smiled. After comprehending the Great Tao for so long, it was time for him to go out and take a stroll. While he was comprehending, the disciples of Emperor Sword Court were also diligently cultivating. Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, and the other trusted aides started to roam the world by themselves, and all of them made a name for themselves. He pondered for a moment. Zhou Xuanji decided to go to the Divine Cliff first. After the Divine Cliff returned to Wanshan Great Thousand, they returned to their original place and rebuilt their sect. Because of Zhou Xuanji's reputation, the Divine Cliff recruited disciples and developed quickly. No faction dared to offend them. Zhou Xuanji passed through the dense fog and came to the Divine Cliff city. Looking at the bustling city, he could not help but recall what he had seen and heard when he first descended. That was how powerful the Divine Cliff was back then. Unfortunately, Cliff Master Han Shuzi, who had given his all to nurture him, was no longer around. Zhou Xuanji strolled forward in the sea of people. Along the way, he heard many disciples talking about him. This is the Divine Cliff that the Sword Emperor first descended to? It's so majestic. Tisk. What's this? The Divine Cliff is only a second-rate faction in the Center God Province. With the Sword Emperor, the Divine Cliff is a first-rate faction. Tisk tsk. I want to join Emperor Sword Court, but I heard that Emperor Sword Court is with the Sword Emperor, and it's hard to find. Zhou Xuanji smiled. He was in a good mood. but he did not feel very excited. He was no longer the child he used to be. As his Dao grew, his mental state was also changing. Nothing in the mortal world entered his eyes. As he moved forward, no one could see his figure or sense his aura. An hour later he came to the Cliff Master's palace. Cliff Master Yang Yutian, Elder Wu Qiu, and Lan Shangying were discussing how to settle the new disciples. Hundreds of years had passed, but their appearances did not change. Time did not leave any traces on them. Zhou Xuanji suddenly appeared and said with a smile, "The divine cliff has been developing well recently. Looks like it will recover to its peak soon, or even surpass it." With this, Yang Yutian and the others turned around. When they saw Zhou Xuanji, they became excited immediately. Yang Yutian and Wu Qiu took a step forward and wanted to hug Zhou Xuanji. But after taking a step, their feet seemed to be rooted to the ground and could not move. Zhou Xuanji no longer belonged to the divine cliff. He was the most powerful person in the heavenly law, the overlord Saint Sword Emperor, who reigned above the heavenly saints. Even though he did not unleash his saints' might, he still gave them immense pressure. "Why are you back?" Yang Yutian held back his excitement and asked in surprise. Lan Shangying also looked at Zhou Xuanji with a complicated expression. Back then, after Zhou Xuanji ascended, she brought him on a mission. That was his first mission, which was to snatch Shi Shinzong from the hegemon Sword Emperor. Zhou Xuanji shrugged and said, "I came back to take a look. I've been meditating in one place for more than 100 years. It's time to take a breather." Meditating? The three looked at each other in dismay, and could not help but admire Zhou Xuanji. If they were in Zhou Xuanji's shoes, how could they calm down and cultivate after becoming the most powerful cultivator at such a young age? Moreover, they had to meditate and calm their minds. Zhou Xuanji began asking about the divine cliff's recent situation. Yang Yutian and Wu Qiu were very enthusiastic, while Lan Shangying listened quietly. She felt a little excited too. With someone from the same sect like Zhou Xuanji, how could the divine cliff not flourish? The four chatted for a while, and Zhou Xuanji began to guide them in their cultivation. No matter what question they asked, Zhou Xuanji could answer them quickly and hit the nail on the head, which enlightened them. After a series of exchanges, Zhou Xuanji's image in their hearts grew even higher. The atmosphere was harmonious. Zhou Xuanji did not put on airs either. He was in a good mood to meet his old friends. Among the stars, a stone coffin floated quietly. A silhouette flew over. It was the demonic ancestor from before. Only his soul was left, wandering in the universe. Ever since he heard that Zhou Xuanji had become an overlord saint, he did not dare to stay in the heavenly law universe anymore. He mustered up his courage and came to this place in the void. "What's that?" The demonic ancestor frowned. Why was there a coffin here? He instinctively wanted to avoid it, but he felt that it was a serendipity. A powerful cultivator who could come here must be very powerful. To be able to prepare a coffin for himself before he died, it was even more extraordinary. He approached the stone coffin carefully and prepared to open it. Chapter 622. After leaving the divine cliff, Zhou Xuanji returned to the northern wilderness region. He wanted to walk the same path as before. Reminiscing about the past could also give one an epiphany in their state of mind. Ever since his rise, the northern wilderness region had become even more exciting. Countless geniuses had emerged, each of them outstanding. His legend continued to spread in the northern wilderness region, becoming more and more legendary. The once destitute Great Zhou Empire had now become one of the most powerful empires in the northern wilderness region. The number of commoners and cultivators under its banner was the highest among all the empires. As he strolled around the world, he could often see his own stone statues. There were even temples where he enjoyed the incense offerings of the mortal world. He discovered that the incense was closely related to his luck. Every time he got close to the joss sticks that were worshipping him, his luck would increase a little. This must be the rules of the heavenly Tao. Gaining people's faith is the greatest reward of benevolence. Zhou Xuanji stood in a simple temple and mumbled to himself. This stone statue looked very ugly, and one of its ears was missing. But for some reason he felt that this stone statue was very spiritual. Perhaps it was because this stone statue had received a lot of incense offerings and had already manifested its spirit. At that moment, a stone monkey emerged from behind him. It was the primordial ancestor statue. Zhou Xuanji looked back at it and asked with narrowed eyes, "Why are you here?" The primordial ancestor statue had screwed him over, so he had a bad impression of it. The demon ancestor's soul escaped from the heavenly law universe and encountered that enemy of mine. I reckon that it won't be long before that fellow uses the demon ancestor's soul to infiltrate the heavenly law universe. You're already very strong now. Are you prepared for battle? The primordial ancestor statue went straight to the point, sounding a little anxious. The soul of the demon ancestor? Zhou Xuanji almost forgot about this guy. He asked, "Then can you tell me the other party's name and ability?" As for that mysterious enemy, he also wanted to get rid of it. Otherwise, it would be like a knife hanging over his head, making him feel uneasy. I was severely injured and lost most of my memories. I only remember that his name has the word yin in it. As for his specific abilities, I can't remember. Although he is strong, he is not as strong as the heavenly Tao. Otherwise, he would have charged in long ago. The primordial ancestor statue replied. Zhou Xuanji frowned. Why did it feel like this fellow was teasing it? Why don't you forget about yourself? He snorted coldly and said, "Since you've fallen to such a state, why not let him capture you?" The primordial ancestor statue fell silent. Zhou Xuanji was very curious about his background. The old immortal, the old beggar, the primordial ancestor statue, and that mysterious flame all came from the Kunlun origin court. So why didn't they know each other? Was the difference in status too great? It had been so many years. Hadn't they met once? Zhou Xuanji was deeply doubtful. After a while, "Since he wants to come in, you can use the power of your eyes. I will teach you a divine ability." The primordial ancestor statue raised its right hand and shot a beam of light from its index finger toward Zhou Xuanji's forehead. Zhou Xuanji quickly grabbed the beam of light with his right hand and examined it before slapping it into his forehead. The primordial ancestor statue was shocked. This kid is so strong. How long has it been since they last met? This rate of growth was simply too outrageous. If he was in the Kunlun origin court, countless almighties would want to rope him in. Zhou Xuanji was not worried about it launching a sneak attack, and he quickly organized the memories of this divine ability. Exterminating divine light. If it hit the enemy, it could immobilize the enemy. If it hit a magic treasure, it could directly snatch it. This divine ability was ingenious. It had two different effects on living beings and magic treasures. After learning this divine ability, Zhou Xuanji could sense the immense power in his eyes. He could already control this power. What's your next plan? Continue hiding? Zhou Xuanji stared at the primordial ancestor statue and asked. This guy was quite sincere. Through the exterminating divine light, he knew that this pair of eyes was indeed powerful. The primordial ancestor statue sighed. I want to be like your senior and ask you to bring me back to the Kunlun origin court. But I can't. If I go back, I will be doomed eternally, and I might even implicate you. As long as you help me destroy Yen, I will stay in the heavenly law universe until my body is reconstructed. Stay in the heavenly law universe? Zhou Xuanji looked at it intently. He did not expose it, but asked if the primordial ancestor statue had any other instructions. The primordial ancestor statue replied, No. Take care of yourself. Don't die in his hands. After that, it dived into the ground and disappeared. Zhou Xuanji smiled and left. He traveled through space and came to the demon realm. Soon he found Xian Xianghua. She was brainwashing a group of demon geniuses in a valley. Although I am a woman, I was able to rise from the mortal world and counterattack to become the lord of the demon world. I not only relied on my talent that surpassed all living beings, but also the pride in my bones. No matter how strong the enemy is, I still feel that they can't withstand a single blow. Xian Xianghua stood on the top of the mountain and laughed arrogantly. The geniuses in the valley all looked fanatical. Of course, no one knew what they were thinking in their hearts, but they had to act that way on the surface. Zhou Xuanji stood on the sea of clouds and heard Xian Xianghua's words. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. This old demonic woman liked this kind of thing. He immediately walked up to Xian Xianghua. Xian Xianghua sensed his aura and looked back in surprise. The geniuses in the valley thought that a powerful enemy was coming. They all took out their enchanted artifacts and prepared for battle. "Why are you here?" Xian Xianghua asked with a smile. She flew up to Zhou Xuanji excitedly. The geniuses in the valley opened their eyes wide at this scene. It was the first time they saw Xian Xianghua behaving like a little girl. As the heavenly law demon monarch, after Xian Xianghua grasped the heart of the demonic realm, her cultivation rose along with it. Now she was already in the ascending heaven state. In the demonic realm, she was invincible. Even ascending heaven level 10 existences could not do anything to her. Such a powerful female cultivator fell in love with someone? "I'm here to see you. Let's talk somewhere else," Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. His eyes were gentle, which made Xian Xianghua a little shy. It was the first time she was shy in front of Zhou Xuanji. She turned around and introduced him to her disciples. "This is the Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji, the current Overlord Saint. You guys go ahead and cultivate. I have to receive him." After that, she held Zhou Xuanji's arm and flew toward the horizon. Boom! An uproar broke out in the valley. "Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji, it's really him? Oh my god, the Sword Emperor is here. Why didn't I come back to my senses just now? He's undoubtedly the most powerful cultivator under the heavenly law. He looks so young. Of course, he's only 500 years old. He's about the same age as your grandson. Aren't you afraid of divine retribution?" The geniuses of the demon realm were extremely excited. Even in the demon realm, Zhou Xuanji's name was like thunder to their ears. The word "most powerful" was enough to make Zhou Xuanji reach a pinnacle height that no one could match. On the other side, in the demon palace, Zhou Xuanji asked Xian Xianghua to sit down before he taught her the exterminating divine light. One must have the eyes bestowed by the primordial ancestor statue to use this divine ability. Jiang Shui and Zhou Shaoxian could not learn it even if they wanted to. Chapter 623. After Xian Xianghua finished inheriting the exterminating divine light, she opened her eyes and exclaimed, "Such a domineering divine art. I didn't expect our eyes to be so powerful." She felt sweet in her heart. Only she and Zhou Xuanji had this pair of eyes. Even Jiang Shui could not compare to her in this aspect. You have to be careful in the near future. The primordial ancestor's enemies are about to use the demon ancestor's soul to attack. He flipped his right hand, and a heavenly law violet chi appeared in his hand. The heavenly law violet chi flew into Xian Xianghua's hand. She curiously sized up the heavenly law violet aura and clicked her tongue in wonder. "This is the heavenly law violet aura that the heavenly saints are fighting over? How do I use it to become a sage?" If it was before, she would definitely refuse, but now that Zhou Xuanji had become a saint and the most powerful overlord saint, she naturally had no reason to refuse. Moreover, she would use his power. Because he was her man. Zhou Xuanji said, "Absorb it first. When you are completely merged into one, you will become a heavenly saint. Of course, if you leave this heavenly law violet chi, you will no longer be a heavenly saint. If you leave the range of the heavenly law, you will lose the power of the heavenly law violet chi." After becoming an overlord saint, he could easily see through the effects of the heaven's law violet chi. To put it bluntly, the heavenly law violet chi was the link between the heavenly law and the heavenly saints. The heavenly law sent an endless stream of heavenly law power to the heavenly law violet chi, and then fed it back to the heavenly saint. Xian Xianghua curled her lips and said, "Isn't such a heavenly saint very weak? It's easy to lose yourself if you're obsessed with the power of a heavenly saint, causing yourself to stagnate. With invincible power, who would still cultivate? Even if he cultivated, he wouldn't feel as if he had a breakthrough like before. Do you want it or not?" Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile, and Xian Xianghua immediately accepted the heavenly law violet chi. After that, the two of them sat on the throne of the Lord of the Demon Realm and started chatting. Now that they'd become experts that ruled over an area, they didn't have to worry too much like they did in the past. "Little Langjun, when will you marry me?" Xian Xianghua lifted Zhou Xuanji's chin and asked with a charming smile. Zhou Xuanji muttered. How do you want me to marry you? Xian Xianghua tilted her head and smiled. Let's have a grand wedding in the demon realm. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, I will discuss this with her mother. Upon hearing this, Xian Xianghua immediately rolled her eyes at him. She wasn't angry. After all, she, Jiang Shui, and Zhou Xiaoxian were already a family. The two of them chatted for a while, and Zhou Xuanji directly entered the world within the lotus. The 24-ranked deep black lotus fell into Xian Xianghua's hands. She played with the 24-ranked deep black lotus inside. Only he would treat such a treasure like a world. The 24-stage deep black lotus also had its own power. And it didn't just contain an independent world. She placed the 24-ranked deep black lotus on her lap and began to comprehend the heavenly law violet qi. The world within the lotus. Zhou Xuanji called Jiang Shui, Zhou Xiaoxian, and Lady Xiaoxian together. Wow, you are finally going to marry Aunt Xian. Zhou Xiaoxian said excitedly, as if she was going to get married. Jiang Shui pinched her arm, causing her to grimace in pain. Lady Xiaoxian covered her mouth and smiled, but didn't say anything. Jiang Shui looked at Zhou Xuanji and said, You should indeed give her a status. After all, she has been devoted to you for so many years, and has done so many things for you. Zhou Xuanji held her hand and smiled. When the time comes, you have to be with me. You are my wife forever. Jiang Shui smiled and said, Oh, do you mean that you will have more concubines in the future? Her smile was filled with a dangerous aura. Zhou Xuanji laughed and did not reply. Jiang Shui hugged his arm and smiled softly. Let's go inside and talk. Ha 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 ha. Zhou Xiaoxian burst into laughter, and so did Lady Xiaoxian. He didn't dare to blame Lady Xiaoxian, but he had no qualms about Zhou Xiaoxian. Practice the white crane sword technique a million times. If you miss one, I will lock you up for a year. Zhou Xuanji snorted. Zhou Xiaoxian heard him, and her face fell immediately. Why? She cried out in grief and indignation. Zhou Xuanji turned to leave as he said, Because I'm your father. I'm the Overlord Saint. If you dare to lie to me, I will know even if you miss one time. Zhou Xiaoxian was completely depressed. She held Lady Xiaoxian's hand and said coquettishly, Grandma, please control him. He's taking it out on his daughter after being bullied in front of his wife. Lady Xiaoxian smiled benevolently and stroked her hair. Don't worry, I will watch from the side, she comforted. Zhou Xiaoxian was speechless. Zhou Xuanji brought Jiang Shui to the demon palace to discuss the marriage with Xian Xianghua. The two women chatted while he wandered around the demon palace. He secretly cast a spell to modify the demon palace. He placed qi internalizing restrictions on every wall and strengthened the walls. All of this was a piece of cake for an overlord saint like him. At the saint realm, he could create something from nothing and turn something rotten into something magical. He could use his saint energy to create anything within the 5 elements. And he could even enlighten living beings. Even if it was a rock, he could easily enlighten it and turn it into a spirit. Finally, Xian Xianghua decided to get married in 10 years. For their current cultivation, 10 years was nothing. As the lord of the demon realm, Xian Xianghua had many things to deal with. She needed 10 years to prepare for the marriage. Zhou Xuanji had no objections. After that, he sent Jiang Shui back into the world in the lotus. He left the demon realm and headed toward the void. He decided to guard the void near Wanshan Great Thousand and wait for Yan's arrival. In a luxurious palace, 10 men in golden armor knelt on the ground with their heads lowered. Before them, a white-haired man sat on a cushion. It was Sheng Tiandao. He wore a loose gray robe and had his eyes closed. He looked like a young man, and there were 3 golden flames on his forehead. They were the size of a thumb. Even though he sat there motionlessly, he gave off an aura that was as majestic as the heavenly law. Saint Ancestor, you really don't mind? A man in golden armor asked with gritted teeth. His eyes were filled with reluctance. Since ancient times, Sheng Tiandao had always been the most powerful heavenly saint. Why did everyone turn against Zhou Xuanji when he rose up? They were not convinced. Sheng Tiandao replied without opening his eyes. It's a good thing for the heavenly law universe that he became the overlord saint. Moreover, he's not an evil person. On the contrary, he's more benevolent than the other heavenly saints. He had been observing Zhou Xuanji since a long time ago, or else he would not have invited Emperor Sword Court to the All Heavens Dao feast. But, no buts. Facing Sheng Tiandao's domineering attitude, the 10 people in the palace did not dare to speak anymore. A while later, Sheng Tiandao spoke slowly. Don't forget what I told you before. Soon I will carry it out. At that time, if you are not powerful enough, don't blame me for abandoning you. The 10 men in golden armor heard him and trembled in fear. They quickly promised that they would work hard to cultivate. I have countless legendary swords. I have countless legendary swords. Chapter 624. In the void, Zhou Xuanji sat on a meteorite and silently comprehended the great Tao around him. His 4 demon god avatars were scattered throughout the starry sky. If the demon ancestor's soul were to approach, he would definitely be able to sense it immediately. At this moment, a figure appeared in front of him. It was Sheng Tiandao. Zhou Xuanji said without opening his eyes. Are you Sheng Tiandao or Phoenix Lord Tianqi? There were only 4 heavenly saints left in the heavenly way. He had already seen 2 of them, and was familiar with their auras. Victory over the heavenly Tao. Zhou Xuanji heard him, and opened his eyes slowly. He was quite curious about this strongest heaven saint. What business do you have with me, sir? Zhou Xuanji asked directly. He could sense no hostility from Sheng Tiandao. The corners of Sheng Tiandao's mouth curled up. He smiled and said, First, congratulations on becoming an overlord saint. The primordial ancestor should have already told you about Yen. Do you know that there is another existence above the heavenly law? He protects the heavenly law universe, preventing the Kunlun origin court from harming it? Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. He did not expect Sheng Tiandao to know so much. Could it be that the primordial ancestor had a favor to ask of him? Above the heavenly Tao is the great Tao. That existence is an eternal and indestructible existence that controls the great Tao. No one knows where he came from, but there is one thing that Yen and the primordial ancestor fear. As long as the heavenly Tao doesn't collapse, he won't make a move. Yen used the soul of the devil ancestor to sneak in. Next, he will most likely look for you, because you have the eye of the primordial ancestor. Sheng Tiandao continued with a mysterious smile. Zhou Xuanji straightforwardly asked, What do you want? Sheng Tiandao smiled and said, I will search for the Kunlun origin court with you. He paused for a moment before continuing. The primordial ancestor's memories have been fading. According to my previous understanding, the Kunlun origin court is different from the world order we imagined. I have been stuck at the Saint Realm for hundreds of millions of years, and I don't want to wait any longer. Several 100 million years, Zhou Xuanji's heart shook. Only then did he realize that he had underestimated the heavenly saint's age. It was indeed impressive that he had reached Overlord Saint level 1 at the age of 500. Sure, he could sense Sheng Tiandao's sincerity. At the same time, he felt that Sheng Tiandao had some understanding of the Kunlun origin court, and might be able to help him. He then said, Before that, I want to defeat fate. Before he became stronger than Yen, he could not leave the heavenly law universe. During this period of time, he had to be careful of fate. At the same time, he also promised Ren Niming that he would keep his promise. Fate, don't blindly trust others. Sheng Tiandao said intently, which made Zhou Xuanji squint his eyes. After this, Sheng Tiandao sat beside Zhou Xuanji. Before Zhou Xuanji could ask, he smiled and said, Why don't we discuss the Tao and each take what we need? All right. Zhou Xuanji agreed immediately. He had yet to discuss Tao with the heavenly saint. Furthermore, the person in front of him was definitely the only existence in the heavenly law universe that could rival him. The 2 sages began their discussion. Sheng Tiandao was the first to talk about his Tao. His Tao was just like his name, it was all about winning. Victory over the heavens, victory over oneself, victory over the heavens. Zhou Xuanji could sense his immense confidence from his words. Soon, Zhou Xuanji was immersed in Sheng Tiandao's Tao technique. Inside a dark palace, the demonic emperor sat on the stage, like a flickering candle in the dark night. After being severely injured by Zhou Xuanji, he could not reform his body even after hundreds of years. After losing demon god Nanming, He did not even dare to return to the Great Thousand World. After knowing that Zhou Xuanji had become an overlord saint, he fled the heavenly law universe with this palace. At this moment, this palace was located in the silent and boundless universe. There were no stars in all directions, only endless darkness. The demonic emperor opened his eyes suddenly and mumbled with a frown. Why do I have an uneasy feeling? Could it be that Zhou Xuanji has found me? It shouldn't be. Could it be that this brat was still holding a grudge against him? He was already an overlord saint. How could he be so narrow-minded? He felt depressed. 500 years ago, he could never have imagined that he would be forced into such a state by a junior. Boom! The palace suddenly shook violently, which shocked him so much that he stood up immediately with his eyes wide open. Damn it! He cursed furiously and thought about what to do. He thought that Zhou Xuanji had already locked onto him. If he ran out, he would surely die. At this moment, the palace gate opened suddenly. A ball of green flame levitated at the gate, which made the demonic emperor extremely anxious. It's not Zhou Xuanji, what's that? The demonic emperor was even more afraid. It was his first time coming to the universe outside the heavenly law universe. He was still fearful of unknown food. The green flame hissed like a venomous snake, which made the demonic emperor shiver in fear. Seeing that the situation was not right, the demonic emperor immediately flew out of the palace. Just when he flew out of the palace, he bumped into a ball of green flame, which scared him out of his wits. What's that? The demonic emperor cried out in fear. He stepped back instinctively, but it was too late. The green flame engulfed his soul in an instant. Ha ha ha. I, the old ancestor, am finally back. An old and frenzied laughter came. This was the last voice the demonic emperor heard. Zhou Xuanji and Sheng Tiandao discussed the Tao for 3 years in the starry sky. Both of them gained something, and Zhou Xuanji completely acknowledged Sheng Tiandao. Of course, it was not because he saw Sheng Tiandao as a friend, but because he acknowledged his character and power. This day, they stopped discussing the Tao. It was not that they did not want to talk, but they sensed the aura of the demonic ancestor's soul. Let me deal with this guy, Sheng Tiandao said with a smile. After that, he disappeared on the spot. He wanted to follow Zhou Xuanji to search for the Kunlun origin court, so he had to do something in advance. Zhou Xuanji did not stop him, and waited on the spot. Just when Sheng Tiandao left, Ren Niming flew over from the Wanshan Great Thousand. You intend to work with him? Ren Niming asked with a frown. Anger could be seen in his eyes. Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and said, I will help you get rid of destiny, and bring him out of the heavenly law universe. There is no conflict between the two. As for Ren Niming, he had always been dubious about him. He had been deceived many times in his life. Ren Niming took a deep breath and said, Do you know why Sheng Tiandao is so powerful? Zhou Xuanji asked with squinted eyes. You want to say that he obtained the power of destiny? Ren Niming shook his head and said meaningfully, He's very mysterious. Even I don't know his background. You must be careful. According to my understanding, he has no relationship with the primordial ancestor. After that, Ren Niming left quickly. Not long after he left, Sheng Tiandao returned. I captured him. Sheng Tiandao flew up to Zhou Xuanji and said with a smile. He opened his right hand, and a ball of light appeared in his hand. It was the demonic ancestor's soul. It was only the size of half a palm, and maintained its human form. He looked indifferent and did not panic at all. He stared into Zhou Xuanji's eyes. You are Yan? Zhou Xuanji asked. He did not sense any danger. It seemed that the demonic ancestor's soul only had a trace of Yan's will, and he came here just to gather information. Chapter 625. The demon ancestor looked at Zhou Xuanji and said calmly, You obtained the primordial ancestor's eyes, so you definitely know where he is. Let me give you a piece of advice. Pluck out your eyes and tell me where the primordial ancestor is, or else you will face unimaginable pain. So arrogant? Zhou Xuanji shook his head and smiled. Can you barge in? He really knew how to boast. If this fellow was really that powerful, how could he let the primordial ancestor roam free until today? Let me give you a word of advice. The primordial ancestor is not a good person. If you protect him, You will face far more enemies than just me. The demon ancestor continued. He was not angered by Zhou Xuanji, and his tone remained the same. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes and asked, "Then tell me about the primordial ancestor's background and about his eyes." He also wanted to learn more about the primordial ancestor. Although the eyes given by the primordial ancestor were powerful, they were too dangerous. Not only for Zhou Xuanji, but also for Xian Xianghua. The primordial ancestor came from the Kunlun origin court. His talent wasn't considered outstanding, but because he seized some kind of power, he obtained your pair of eyes. Relying on these eyes, he rose to power in the Kunlun origin court, but he also angered some immortal existences. This is all I can tell you. This pair of eyes will attract endless troubles, and you won't even know what these troubles represent. The demon ancestor looked into Zhou Xuanji's eyes and said meaningfully. He had waited for the primordial ancestor for countless years, and was in no hurry. Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. Should he take the risk for the primordial ancestor? Although this pair of eyes was powerful, it was not necessary. The fortuitous encounter is already in my hands. How can I give it up? Sheng Tiandao said with a smile, answering Zhou Xuanji's doubts. That's right. He didn't steal this eye. Moreover, if he handed over the eye, would he really be able to resolve this karma? He didn't think so. He had lived for more than 500 years, and had experienced similar situations before. Since that's the case, then wait for me. When I enter the heavenly Tao in 100 days, it will be the time when the heavenly Tao collapses. At that time, all of you will die without a doubt. The demon ancestor said coldly. With that said, his soul exploded and dissipated. The pitiful demon ancestor was used as a spear just like that, and his soul was scattered. Sheng Tiandao looked at Zhou Xuanji and said, I will help you when the time comes. He was still waiting to find the Kunlun origin court with Zhou Xuanji, so he naturally had to do his best. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, Then let's part ways here. I need to go back and continue comprehending Tao to increase my power. Enlightenment? Sheng Tiandao nodded and began to ponder. What kind of Tao could make one stronger just by comprehending it? Zhou Xuanji turned and left, quickly returning to the Wanshan Great Thousand. As soon as he entered the clouds, he saw a familiar figure. Xian Daoya. This guy is still alive. Zhou Xuanji smiled and quickly appeared before Xian Daoya. Xian Daoya was given a big fright. Seeing that it was Zhou Xuanji, he heaved a sigh of relief. How could it be you? Xian Daoya patted his chest and sighed, looking terrified. Why did you come back? Zhou Xuanji asked. When he saw Xian Daoya's wretched back, he felt that this guy was plotting something. Xian Daoya looked around and used his divine will to scan the surroundings. After making sure there were no other living beings, he said in a low voice, I went to the edge of the heavenly law universe. Guess what I found? Zhou Xuanji mocked, aliens. Xian Daoya was stunned. What kind of people were aliens? He said seriously, I saw Phoenix Lord Tianqi. Truth be told, he was the mastermind behind the great Emperor Dao court. I felt that something was wrong with him. I called out to him, but he did not respond at all. It was as though he had lost his soul. He could not help but shiver at the mention of this. Zhou Xuanji frowned. Could Phoenix Lord Tianqi have been possessed by Yen? I have a premonition that something big is going to happen. Every time I divine the days, I feel a chill down my spine. Xian Daoya shook his head and said with a trembling voice. There was something he did not say. He felt that the heavenly law was going to collapse. Out of the 9 saints, only 4 were left. The heavenly law qi was mostly depleted, and the heavenly law was at its weakest. What's your next plan? Zhou Xuanji changed the topic. He and Xian Daoya became friends after a fight. Ever since he knew about Xian Daoya, Daoya old man was troubled. Only the one who started the trouble could untie it. Why? You want to subdue me? Sure. Xian Daoya held back his excitement and said, in the current heavenly law universe, Zhou Xuanji was definitely the most powerful. Only by following him could he have the opportunity to reconstruct his body. Zhou Xuanji said, my grand teacher, who is your split soul, needs you to solve his problem. Xian Daoya's expression froze immediately. In the universe, on a floating barren island, Hundreds of powerful cultivators from the great Emperor Dao court stood before a gigantic peak. All of them looked solemn. Following their gaze, they saw Phoenix Lord Tianqi looking down at them from the peak. Phoenix Lord Tianqi's body was covered by a pair of black wings. His face was pale and bloodless, and his eyes were cold. His green pupils seemed to be hiding two universes. His long flaming hair was burning fiercely, and he emanated a horrifying aura that froze the surrounding asteroids. He looked down at everyone and said, "The heavenly law is about to be destroyed. I have no hope of working together with Sheng Tiandao. Next, I need you to leave the heavenly law universe and head toward the end of the void to find a stone stele with the words Dao Hong carved on it. After you find the Dao Hong stone stele, find a secluded place to hide and wait for me to find you." Hearing this, all the powerful cultivators from the great Emperor Dao court were shocked. The heavenly law is about to be destroyed? What the hell happened? They were confused, but they did not dare to ask, because they could tell that Phoenix Lord Tianqi was in a bad mood. An old man asked, "Master, what are you going to do?" Phoenix Lord Tianqi replied calmly, "I will devour the heavenly saints and the great thousand world, and then I will find you." "Okay, all of you set off immediately. I will give you a month to end your ties with the mortal world. After a month, if anyone is still in the heavenly law universe, don't blame me for being merciless." At this point, the people from the great Emperor Dao court could not retort and could only leave. Phoenix Lord Tianqi smiled. His green pupils glowed with an evil radiance. "Since the heavenly law is about to be destroyed, then help me. Wanshan Great Thousand." After returning to the familiar forest, Zhou Xuanji continued his Dao enlightenment. He had already arranged for Xian Daoya to meet Daoya Old Man in the Lotus World. If Xian Daoya dared to act recklessly, he could kill him anytime. For some reason, he suddenly felt uneasy. He felt that something big was about to happen. He looked up at the blue sky and mumbled, "Seems like my peaceful days are numbered." Shortly after, he closed his eyes and continued to understand his great Dao. After discussing Dao with Sheng Tiandao, he learned many things. Most importantly, Sheng Tiandao's boldness that could conquer everything deeply touched him. Boldness was related to willpower. If one's willpower was powerful enough, he could change everything. Chapter 626. Xian Daoya and Daoya Old Man talked for 10 days and 10 nights before they ended. After the conversation, although Daoya Old Man looked very haggard, his eyes were as energetic as before. His heart was finally relieved. No matter what, if there wasn't Xian Daoya, there wouldn't be him. In terms of origin, Xian Daoya didn't do him wrong. Zhou Xuanji moved Xian Daoya out. "All right, I've already helped you relieve his worries. The grudges between us can be considered written off, right?" Xian Daoya smiled. His smile was a little eager. Looking at him, Zhou Xuanji felt that he deserved a beating. Zhou Xuanji nodded lightly and closed his eyes. Xian Daoya was startled and asked, "Do you have any arrangements for me next?" Zhou Xuanji muttered, "Go water the plants at the foot of the mountain." Since Xian Daoya wanted to follow him, then so be it. At least this guy had some ability. Xian Daoya was dumbfounded. Watering plants. What's the point of watering the weeds all over the mountain? He thought that Zhou Xuanji was making things difficult for him, so he could only leave the mountain obediently. Zhou Xuanji focused on comprehending the great Dao. His will of the way had been constantly strengthening. Once his Dao intent took form, his cultivation would definitely soar. Not only that, but he could also fuse his will into his sword. Sword Dao rules was no longer just a single attack method. It could be fused with various sword techniques. For example, Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow, Emperor's Way Thousand Hand Sword Buddha. After becoming an overlord saint for so many years, his power had always been increasing. It was just that he had never had the chance to fight. Therefore, in the face of Yan's threat, there was still a sliver of hope in his heart. After living for so long, he was used to fighting and even thirsted for it. In the blink of an eye, there was only half a year left until Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xianghua's wedding. The entire demon realm was in great jubilation. All demonic creatures knew that the current lord of the demon realm was going to marry Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji. This was a joyous occasion for the devil realm. After all, Zhou Xuanji was an overlord saint, the most powerful existence in the universe. If Xian Xianghua were to marry him, the demonic world would also be able to prosper. Jiang Shui, Zhou Shaoxian, Huang Lianxin, and Lady Zhao Xian were also in the devil world, keeping Xian Xianghua company. Zhou Xuanji moved to the demon realm and continued to comprehend the great Tao. As for this marriage, he didn't need to personally plan it, he only needed to participate. This saved him a lot of trouble. At this moment, he was meditating halfway up a mountain, facing the cliff and comprehending the Tao. 100 divine swords hovered in front of him and spun rapidly, occasionally changing their trajectory. Several years passed. Zhou Xuanji's understanding of the great Tao deepened. In his opinion, the reason why the great Tao surpassed the heavenly Tao and was omnipresent was because the great Tao was the foundation of the universe. It was just like a house. The entire structure was the great Tao, and the master inside was the heavenly Tao. However, the walls inside were also the great Tao. The great Tao was the invisible wall of the universe stabilizing it. Not only that, but the great Tao could also evolve all things. Compared to the heavenly Tao, it was more creative. With the power of the great Tao, he could destroy the entire heavenly law universe with a single thought. After understanding how terrifying the great Tao was, Zhou Xuanji desired it even more. He suddenly opened his eyes and frowned. "What's going on this aura?" Zhou Xuanji mumbled to himself and immediately disappeared. Deep within the universe, a terrifying streak of light shot over, its diameter reaching millions and millions of li. It blasted apart countless stars, tearing apart space as it sped forward. Their destination was the Wanshan Great Thousand. Zhou Xuanji appeared before the Wanshan Great Thousand and slashed with the thunderclap sword. The sword chi was domineering and blocked the horrifying streak of light. An explosion shook the entire universe, and the spiritual chi in the universe churned and formed a violent gale. Zhou Xuanji's pupils contracted. He looked back instinctively and saw that the Wanshan Great Thousand could not withstand the violent pressure and was crushed. He immediately took away some living beings with his divine sense, including the divine cliff. But everything happened too quickly. The living beings he could take away were less than a millionth of the Wanshan Great Thousand. What's going on? Zhou Xuanji looked toward the direction of the streak of light with a bitter expression. Another streak of light shot toward him. This time, its target was not the Wanshan Great Thousand, but a great thousand world behind it. Zhou Xuanji dashed over and slashed it apart before flying toward the direction of the streak of light. Such a powerful saint's might. Phoenix Lord Tianqi. Zhou Xuanji's eyes were cold as he flew forward at full speed. He had met barbarian god Huangluo, Buddha Yongling, and Sheng Tiandao. Among the remaining heavenly saints, only Phoenix Lord Tianqi had not come into contact with him. He could tell from the great Emperor Dao court that Phoenix Lord Tianqi was not someone who kept a low profile. He was only planning in the dark. On the other side of the universe, Phoenix Lord Tianqi, who was millions of meters tall, levitated in the starry sky. His wings were still tightly wrapped around his body. A violent suction force was devouring the stars, asteroids, continents, and countless living beings. All of them were absorbed into his wings. At a glance, the entire universe had turned into a massive vortex with Phoenix Lord Tianqi at the center. It's Phoenix Lord Tianqi. What's going on? He's going to devour us? Damn. Someone save us. We're doomed. We can't resist at all. The living beings cried miserably as they were devoured by Phoenix Lord Tianqi. Phoenix Lord Tianqi was indifferent to their cries of pain. They were just ants. He would not feel anything even if he stomped a bunch of them to death. An eye opened on his forehead, which shot out beams of light. The beams expanded rapidly and shot toward various parts of the universe. Boom! A stream of sword chi came at him suddenly. It reached his face in the blink of an eye and was about to cut him in half. The eye on his forehead opened wide, and the sword chi disappeared into thin air. Zhou Xuanji came up to him quickly and said with a deep voice, "What are you trying to do?" Phoenix Lord Tianqi was not surprised. Instead, he sized Zhou Xuanji up with interest and said, "Your body is really powerful. If I devour you, it will surely help my bloodline evolve." After he spoke, he spread his wings and revealed a body covered in dark purple crystals, as though he was wearing a layer of armor. Zhou Xuanji, you should belong to me. Let me give you a piece of advice. The heavenly law is about to be destroyed. Don't stop me, or else I will make you regret it. Phoenix Lord Tianqi laughed sinisterly. His murderous aura locked the entire universe. Zhou Xuanji took out the 3 clear Tai Chi sword and activated the sword fusion technique, 9 soul fusion technique, and primordial chaos sword shadow. In an instant, billions of sword shadows appeared in the starry sky and surrounded Phoenix Lord Tianqi. Each sword shadow was radiating a brilliant white radiance, as though gods had appeared. Phoenix Lord Tianqi smiled with disdain, and the primordial chaos sword shadow charged toward him. Boom! His majestic body was shredded into pieces by the primordial chaos sword shadow. The primordial chaos sword shadow, which contained Tao Will, was so powerful. Each sword shadow had horrifying destructive power. Countless feathers danced in the starry sky. The creatures that were still in the process of being sucked abruptly stopped. They stared at the scene with their mouths agape. Even a connecting heaven cultivator would tremble in fear when facing the primordial chaos sword shadow. It was too powerful. Chapter 627. After killing Phoenix Lord Tianqi, Zhou Xuanji did not let his guard down. He could still sense Phoenix Lord Tianqi's aura. This guy was not dead yet. Could he be like demon god Nanming and have the ability to split? Zhou Xuanji thought with squinted eyes. He clearly sensed that the primordial chaos sword shadow hit Phoenix Lord Tianqi accurately. And this Phoenix Lord Tianqi was not a duplicate either. His aura was so dense that it was not weaker than Sheng Tiandao's. It seemed to be some kind of special divine ability. Your sword qi contains a high-level power that is even more powerful than the heavenly law. What is it? Phoenix Lord Tianqi's voice came. He sounded a little confused. It was his first time facing such a power. Somehow he found it familiar, as though he had met him before. After he spoke, Phoenix Lord Tianqi reconstructed his body. It was unscathed, just like before he was killed. What divine ability is this? Zhou Xuanji asked. Next, he fused the Thunderclap sword and 3 clear Tai Chi sword into his body, before taking out the Saint Slayer sword. Phoenix Lord Tianqi smiled. I can't tell you my natal divine ability. After that, he charged toward Zhou Xuanji. A violent gale blew at Zhou Xuanji's face. Zhou Xuanji did not lift his sword but crashed into Phoenix Lord Tianqi head-on. Phoenix Lord Tianqi was a few million meters tall, while Zhou Xuanji was less than 2 meters tall. They were not on the same level at all. Boom! Phoenix Lord Tianqi was sent flying backward like a mountain that was hit by a grain of sand. It was extremely shocking. Zhou Xuanji was an overlord saint. The heavenly saint and overlord saint's bodies clashed. There was no comparison at all. Zhou Xuanji followed up with another attack. The Saint Slayer sword could only be used once a year, so he must seize the opportunity. Phoenix Lord Tianqi was in great pain from the collision. Damn Overlord Saint, he cursed in his heart. His race's talent was powerful too, but he relied on the heavenly law violet qi to become a saint. His body did not transform. Not only did Zhou Xuanji build his body, but he also used the sword fusion technique and 9 soul fusion technique. His body had reached the pinnacle below the heavenly law. Phoenix Lord Tianqi could not bear it any longer. Phoenix Lord Tianqi flapped his wings. Countless arrows shot toward Zhou Xuanji like a violent storm. Zhou Xuanji transformed into a 5-clawed golden dragon and charged forward forcefully, scattering the rain of arrows. Phoenix Lord Tiangang dodged quickly. The eye in between Phoenix Lord Tianho's brows opened again. Countless streams of intense flames gushed out and turned into a gigantic phoenix. It covered the entire starry sky and swallowed Zhou Xuanji. This fire phoenix was even bigger than the boundless world. Zhou Xuanji's eyes focused. He transformed into a legendary sword and used Void Instant Kill, piercing through the fire phoenix. He quickly rushed towards Phoenix Lord Tianho, transformed into his human form, and looked up. Phoenix Lord Tianqi stared at him. Extreme Nightmare Abyss. Phoenix Lord Tianqi fell into a daze, and Zhou Xuanji swung the Saint Slayer sword as well. An all-out slash. Sword Qi burst forth, illuminating the universe. Phoenix Lord Tianqi was directly killed. His body exploded and his soul dispersed. Zhou Xuanji stopped with a smile. This time, he could feel that Phoenix Lord Tianqi was truly dead. His aura suddenly dissipated. A heavenly saint was still a heavenly saint. Unable to withstand a single blow, he subconsciously put away his sword and replaced it with the Thousand Samsara sword. He had always been on guard against fate, lest it ambushed him. Wait a minute. Something was wrong. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He slashed at Phoenix Lord Tianqi twice, but he did not absorb any magic energy. Now using world internalization during battle had become his instinct. Each of his slashes contained world internalization. He immediately turned and looked around, trying to find Phoenix Lord Tianqi. Zhou Xuanji, you are powerful indeed. In terms of power, I am inferior to you. But it is impossible for you to kill me. There is only one Zhou Xuanji in the heavenly law universe. I want to see how you are going to stop me. Phoenix Lord Tianqi laughed presumptuously and disappeared. Zhou Xuanji understood what he meant. He wanted to devour the great thousand world and all living beings. What are you trying to do? You are so sure that the heavenly law is going to be destroyed, and you want to have a life and death struggle? Zhou Xuanji cried out with a deep voice. His voice was like a thunderclap that shook the entire universe. Life and death struggle? How can someone like you, who relies on luck, understand my ambition? Phoenix Lord Tianqi sneered with disdain. After that, his aura disappeared completely. Zhou Xuanji frowned and left immediately. The heavenly law universe was too vast. He could not take care of every place. Emperor Sword Court was in the Lotus World, but his wife and daughter were not there. He had to return to the demon realm. In the demon palace, Xian Xianghua frowned and asked, "What was that suppressive aura just now?" Jiang Shui, Zhou Xiaoxian, Huang Lianxin, and Lady Zhaoxian could not sense it. They looked at each other in confusion. There were only the 5 of them in the palace. They were discussing the details of the wedding, but Xian Xianghua suddenly became silent, which made them feel strange. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji came into the palace. The wedding might have to be delayed, he sighed softly. The 5 women's expressions changed. Zhou Xuanji explained the situation. He had already hidden the demon realm in the void, far away from the great thousand world. What should we do next? Xian Xianghua asked. She was not angry. As long as she was alive, it would not be a problem for her to marry Zhou Xuanji as many times as she wanted. Zhou Xiaoxian was very excited and asked, "Are we going to travel through the void to find that Kunlun origin court?" She did not venture out for a long time. To her, as long as Emperor Sword Court was with her, it did not matter where the environment was. As for the danger, she was looking forward to it. She had always dreamed of being like Zhou Xuanji, adventuring everywhere and slaying gods and demons alike. She only wanted to be quick in her actions. Zhou Xuanji said, "I will merge the demon realm with the 24-ranked deep black lotus. From now on, the 2 worlds will live in harmony. You, the lord of the demon realm, will be the mediator. You can explain things clearly, but don't take them away forcefully." Xian Xianghua nodded and disappeared immediately. Zhou Xuanji looked at the other 4 women and asked, "Will you stay in the demon realm or return to Emperor Sword Court?" The 4 women chose to return to Emperor Sword Court. Staying here would only delay Xian Xianghua. After taking them away, Zhou Xuanji came out of the demon realm. He enveloped the demon realm with his saint energy, and the 24-ranked deep black lotus appeared beside him. Under the compression of the saint energy, the demon realm shrunk visibly. At the same time, the heavenly law universe was in chaos. Many great thousand worlds, independent worlds, and mortal realms were devoured and absorbed by Phoenix Lord Tianqi. Sheng Tiandao, barbarian god Huangluo, and Buddha Yongling were searching for Phoenix Lord Tianqi. However, Phoenix Lord Tianqi was mysterious and bizarre. He would disappear every time he was discovered. The 3rd saint almost exploded in anger. He felt like he was being played. On the other side, Ren Niming traveled swiftly in the universe with Si Mengyan and Qiu Hu. They looked anxious, afraid that they would encounter Phoenix Lord Tianqi. Damn, this is such a bad feeling. Qiu Hu cursed softly as he looked left and right. Ren Niming glanced at him and said, "Shut up. Be careful. He will find us directly. Xiaohu heard him, and immediately shut his mouth in fear. Are you going to find Zhou Xuanji? A voice came from ahead, and the three stopped immediately. They looked over, and saw the demonic emperor floating a few hundred miles away like a cloud of dust. Chapter 628. Demonic Emperor, you worm is not dead yet? Ren Niming said coldly. He hated the demonic emperor from the bottom of his heart. The demonic emperor looked at the three of them with a strange smile, but did not say a word. Si Mengyan frowned, while Qiuhu muttered, "Why does this fellow feel a little strange?" The demonic emperor's gaze was extremely invasive, as though he was looking at prey, which made them very unhappy. This bug should be corroded by some kind of power. Be careful, Ren Niming said in a low voice. He had already seen through the demonic emperor. The demonic emperor twisted his neck and laughed coldly. Fate, I didn't expect you to end up like this. Come here, let me eat you and realize your final value. The moment he said that, the three of them felt their blood run cold. This guy knew Ren Niming's true identity and still wanted to eat him? The demonic emperor rushed toward Ren Niming. Si Mengyan immediately waved his hand, and boundless blood chi flew out of his sleeve, transforming into countless blood snakes that pounced toward the demonic emperor. Qiuhu roared furiously, his voice shaking the universe. The demonic emperor was not affected by the tiger's roar. He passed through the army of blood snakes and arrived before Ren Niming. Ren Niming did not panic. His eyes were cold and flashed with blue lightning. Bang! Blue lightning burst forth, forcing Si Mengyan and Qiuhu back. The two of them looked up and were shocked to see that Ren Niming's right hand had become a knife and pierced through the demonic emperor's throat. The demonic emperor's hands were still in the posture of a hunting eagle. He's that strong. Qiuhu's eyes widened in disbelief. In the void, Zhou Xuanji successfully fused the demon realm into the 24-rank deep black lotus, and he immediately left this void. The Wanshan Great Thousand had been destroyed. Although he had saved many living beings, there were still many disciples of the Emperor Sword Court and the Divine Cliff who had met with misfortune. This hatred must be avenged. He couldn't stand it anymore. After putting away the demon world, he went to the Northern Wilderness region and also refined the Northern Wilderness region, fusing it into the 24-rank deep black lotus. The three realms did not merge together, but instead stacked on top of each other. They were a distance away from each other and did not disturb each other. After doing all this, he began to focus on searching for Phoenix Lord Tianho. This dog must die. Arriving at the 34th level of the universe, he flew quickly, his divine will sweeping in all directions of the universe. Soon he found the fate-defying trio. They were engaged in a fierce battle with the demonic emperor. That guy is still alive, but why is there something wrong with his aura? Zhou Xuanji frowned and immediately gave chase. Bang! Stars exploded one after another, and Ren Niming flew backward. His long hair danced in the wind, and his face was filled with anger as he looked over with clenched teeth. The demonic emperor was like a crazed demon, weaving through the explosions, chasing after Ren Niming with a greedy expression. Si Mengyan and Qiuhu continuously rushed over to block the demonic emperor, but they were both sent flying. They were not his match at all. Fate, where are you going? The demonic emperor laughed maniacally, causing the entire starry sky to fall into a deathly silence. Seeing that he was getting closer to Ren Niming, Zhou Xuanji suddenly appeared. Bang! Zhou Xuanji exploded the demonic emperor's body with a single palm strike, leaving only a strand of his soul floating in the air. This wisp of soul was very strange, as if two souls were entangled together. One of them was the demonic emperor. He was being hugged by an old and sinister soul, as if he was hugging a baby. The demonic emperor's eyes were tightly closed, and he fell into a deep sleep. The old soul hugged him and looked at Zhou Xuanji with a venomous and ruthless expression. What is this? Qiuhu exclaimed, feeling goosebumps all over his body. Si Mengyan also tightly frowned. This soul looked really horrifying. You are not a creature from the heavenly law universe. Ren Niming looked at the old soul and cried out in a low voice. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. Could this fellow also be from the Kunlun origin court? Was the Kunlun Origin Court going to fully invade the Heavenly Law universe? The Flame Emperor is just outside. He will soon barge in. At that time, all of you will die. You have no idea how strong he is. Let me, your ancestor, eat your fate, and I will ensure that all of you leave the Heavenly Law cosmos alive. The old soul looked at Zhou Xuanji and laughed sinisterly. No one could tell if he was being sincere or not. Flame Emperor? Zhou Xuanji thought of the Flame Emperor from Chinese mythology. Without you we can still leave alive, he said with a cold laugh. After saying that, he immediately made a move, and used the universal attraction to suck the old soul over. The old soul cried out furiously, "Brat, don't offend me, or else you will regret it." Zhou Xuanji directly sucked him into the Tianxia map, and suppressed him with saint energy. He had long since moved Sovereign Xian and Dao Lord Xuantian's souls into the Tianxia map, to help him look after the souls imprisoned in the Tianxia map. He ordered in his heart to have the souls of the two powerful beings help him interrogate for information. Xiao Hu and Si Mingyan flew over, looking very excited. They had long since heard that Zhou Xuanji had become an overlord saint, but they did not expect him to be so powerful. He had killed an enemy that they could not defeat with a single palm. Ren Niming came in front of Zhou Xuanji and said seriously, "If we don't kill Phoenix Lord Tianqi, the Heavenly Law will definitely collapse." If the Heavenly Law collapsed, the Heavenly Law universe would also be destroyed. When that time came, what was the point of seeking revenge from fate? Zhou Xuanji asked. Isn't there another existence above the Heavenly Law? When the Heavenly Law is in danger, won't he act? Ren Niming felt quite startled before shaking his head. How can we speculate about such an existence? However, according to my understanding, that existence does not care about the Heavenly Law at all. Otherwise, how could he allow so many outerverse creatures to sneak in? He sighed, feeling incredibly complicated. The plan that he had plotted for countless years had been ruined because of Phoenix Lord Tianqi's sudden attack. His heart was stifled, depressed and aggrieved. Then let's escape immediately, Xiao Hu said anxiously. As long as he followed Zhou Xuanji and left the Heavenly Law universe, he might still have a chance of survival. It was too dangerous to stay in the Heavenly Law universe. Si Mingyan nodded and said, "Anyway, the old ancestor's revenge has been avenged. Heavenly Lord Xiantai was dead, and his wish was fulfilled. I will bring you into the demon realm. I will go after Phoenix Lord Tianqi first. If not, we will leave the Heavenly Law universe." Zhou Xuanji muttered. Xiao Hu and Si Mingyan nodded in agreement. Ren Niming was in a dilemma. "I will come and find you after some time," he said with gritted teeth. After saying this, he left. Zhou Xuanji did not ask him to stay. He looked at Xiao Hu and Si Mingyan. These two were already more powerful than saint contenders. It seemed like the serendipity that Ren Niming gave them was incredible. He waved his right hand and sent the two into the demon realm. He continued ahead. At the same time, Phoenix Lord Tianqi was still devouring worlds. Once the three heavenly saints appeared, he disappeared immediately. As he devoured more and more worlds, his range of movement shortened. The time taken for the three heavenly saints to catch up to him was also shortened. This time, Zhou Xuanji caught up and surrounded Phoenix Lord Tianqi with the three heavenly saints. Phoenix Lord Tianqi wrapped his wings around his body and said with an unruly smile, "You are powerless. Most of the vast 1,000 worlds have been devoured by me. Soon, you won't be able to do anything to me even if you join hands." Chapter 629. Seeing how arrogant Phoenix Lord Tianqi was, the three heavenly saints were all furious. Barbarian god Huangluo roared, "How dare you!" He immediately attacked, punching out. The space collapsed, and darkness instantly swallowed Phoenix Lord Tianho. Phoenix Lord Tianqi's aura also disappeared. Sheng Tiandao frowned. His gaze moved left and right as he searched for Phoenix Lord Tianqi's aura. Buddha Yongling flew over to Zhou Xuanji and sighed as he said, "There's nothing we can do. His divine abilities are too strange, and he most likely obtained some fortuitous encounter that we don't know about." His face was gloomy, and his mood was extremely uncomfortable. For him, he had helped Heavenly Lord Xiantai kill old ancestor Hongshi. In the end, before he could dominate the heavenly law universe, the heavenly law universe would be destroyed. At this moment, he couldn't help but feel powerless, as if he was drawing water with a wicker basket. Then what do you plan to do next? Zhou Xuanji asked. He had a way out anyway. If he really could not do it, he would leave. In any case, his family would always follow him. Buddha Yongling's expression was gloomy, and he fell into hesitation. Barbarian god Huangluo also gave up on chasing Phoenix Lord Tianqi. He came up to Zhou Xuanji and said furiously, "Master, Phoenix Lord Tianqi is too arrogant. You must eliminate him." Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "I'm more powerful than him indeed, but I can't catch up to him, nor can I kill him." Every mystique had its flaws, but Phoenix Lord Tianqi's mystique was too mysterious. They had never seen it before, so they couldn't think of any flaws. "Master, if you leave the heavenly law universe, you must bring me along." Didn't Sheng Tiandao have the same thought? If the three of us work together, we'll have a greater chance of surviving. Barbarian god Huangluo changed the topic, and his tone revealed a trace of eagerness. His real goal was to say this sentence. Zhou Xuanji thought for a while and nodded in agreement. "Then bring me along too," Buddha Yongling said anxiously. If he was left behind, he would definitely die. Zhou Xuanji said profoundly, "If you leave the heavenly law, you will no longer be heavenly saints. Without the power of the heavenly law, the strength of the heavenly saints would plummet." Barbarian god Huangluo sighed and said, "We have to give it a try." Buddha Yongling nodded as well. At this point, there was no other way. Sheng Tiandao flew over and said, "Let's give up and leave the heavenly law universe first." Zhou Xuanji looked at the three heavenly saints and sighed in his heart. This was a heavenly saint. When he encountered danger, the first thing he thought of was to escape. Zhou Xuanji said, "Each of you try to take away as many worlds as you can. Consider it an explanation to the heavenly law. We will meet here again in a month." With that, he turned around and left. He did not want to take in any more living beings. He was not a heavenly saint, and had never enjoyed the power of a heavenly saint. The 3 realms in the 24-rank Deep Black Lotus were enough. Looking at his back, the 3 saints looked at each other. "We are inferior to him." Buddha Yongling sighed. It was unknown what he was referring to, but he turned and left as well. In the dark void, Phoenix Lord Tian Ho was sitting cross-legged. His wings burned with purple flames and fluttered slightly. He suddenly opened the third eye between his brows. "Come out," Phoenix Lord Tianqi said. As his voice faded, a black shadow appeared in front of him. If not for the purple flames, it would be impossible to distinguish the existence of the black shadow. The black shadow stared at immortal Lord Tian Ho and said, "Let's stop here. You have already devoured so many worlds, and are stronger than Sheng Tiandao. Next, you should help me surpass Sheng Tiandao and control this universe." The black shadow was the consciousness of destiny. So all of this was his arrangement. How are you going to control it? The current heavenly law is still not something I can deal with. Phoenix Lord Tianqi asked back, still keeping his third eye open. The consciousness of destiny replied, "I have my ways. Don't think I don't know your plan. If you dare to go against me, don't even think about leaving the heavenly law universe." Having heard that, Phoenix Lord Tianqi opened his eyes and said, "A faction outside of heavenly law is targeting Ren Niming. Aren't you concerned?" The consciousness of destiny was silent. Phoenix Lord Tianqi smiled, and a trace of mockery flashed in his eyes. "Rules are rules. Do you really think you can control me?" He thought disdainfully in his heart. At the same time, he was thinking about how to leave the heavenly law universe. He was already powerful enough, but he did not want to offend Zhou Xuanji. He felt that Zhou Xuanji must have a more powerful background. At this moment, Destiny's consciousness suddenly entered his body. "You!" His expression changed drastically, and he roared furiously. In the next second, his body began to twist and swell like a meatball. Zhou Xuanji had been trying his best to track down Phoenix Lord Tianqi, but he found that Phoenix Lord Tianqi's aura had suddenly disappeared. The heavenly law universe also quieted down. What's going on? Could he have already left? Zhou Xuanji tightly frowned and thought to himself uneasily. He could faintly sense that a great disaster was about to befall him. He stopped in the starry sky and looked around. In the boundless universe, he seemed incredibly small, like a scale in the ocean. He immediately took out the thunderclap sword and prepared to fight. A pair of eyes suddenly appeared in the starry sky above him. They were incredibly big, as if they occupied the entire starry sky. Zhou Xuanji looked up and frowned again. These eyes, Phoenix Lord Tianqi's eyes. No. The gaze was completely different. This pair of eyes looked incredibly empty and emotionless. Who are you? Zhou Xuanji asked in a low voice, and an indescribable pressure came at him. Ever since he had broken through to the Overlord Saint stage, it was the first time he had felt such pressure. He felt like he was suffocating. You have been targeting me this entire time, but you don't know who I am? The consciousness of destiny's voice sounded out, as if countless people were shouting at Zhou Xuanji from all directions. Destiny. Zhou Xuanji immediately took out the Great Thousand Reincarnation Sword and prepared to fight. Zhou Xuanji, you do not belong to the heavenly law universe. I banished you but did not kill you completely. I only wanted you to leave. But you only have yourself to blame. You were bewitched by Ren Niming. Destiny's consciousness coldly harumphed. It was not in a hurry to act, and instead chose to judge Zhou Xuanji. If I was heartless, your mother's soul would have been destroyed long ago. If I was heartless, how could I let you live to this day? Ren Niming was only a part of my consciousness when I was born. I wanted to explore the rules of the myriad world, but he overestimated himself and thought that he was the true destiny. Ridiculous. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. How was this different from what Ren Niming had said? Their identities should be reversed? Accept your punishment. The consciousness of destiny roared, and the giant eye above suddenly descended. Zhou Xuanji slashed with his sword instinctively. There was a loud bang. A powerful light dazzled Zhou Xuanji's vision, and he instantly lost his sight. When his consciousness fell into complete chaos, the voice of destiny's consciousness sounded again. Every universe has its own rules. The struggle between rules is also a struggle between the common people. Zhou Xuanji, have you ever thought about who you are fighting for? Whoosh! Zhou Xuanji heard the sound of rain falling, which became louder and louder until it became a downpour. His consciousness also woke up. He did his best to open his eyes, and what he saw was a brilliant white light. Following this, he saw a man wearing a mask and a hood. He wore glasses and calmly looked down at him. Chapter 630. The patient has regained consciousness and can be sent back to the ward. The masked man wiped the sweat off his forehead with the back of his hand. Following this, the scene in front of Zhou Xuanji began to spin, and he turned his head in a daze. This is nurse. Am I dreaming? Zhou Xuanji thought to himself blankly, and felt a splitting headache. He would occasionally think about the memories of his previous lifetime, but ever since he comprehended Tao insight, his worries towards his previous lifetime had calmed down. After a while, he was pushed into the ward by two nurses. He turned his head, and saw that there were two empty beds next to him. The sunlight shone in through the window. It was bright and warm. This realistic feeling didn't feel like a dream at all. Zhou Xuanji frowned. After the two nurses hung up the four and left, he slowly sat up. He leaned against the wall of the bed and examined his body. He realized that he was wearing a blue and white striped hospital gown. The holy power in his body had completely disappeared. However, as he woke up, the Tianxia map began to continuously provide him with holy power, helping him heal his heavily injured body. What happened? Zhou Xuanji mumbled to himself. Purple radiance flashed in his black pupils. Could it be that he was reborn again? But if he was reborn, why would he be in a hospital that looked like a modern city? Most importantly, his Tianxia map and cultivation realm were still there. Even the 24-tier deep black lotus was still there. However, his soul was severely injured and his spiritual force could not enter it. Sword Spirit. He called out in his heart. Sword Master. The Sword Spirit replied. Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and asked, What's going on? Am I in some kind of illusion? The Sword Spirit replied, No, it should be in the real world. It's just that it's very strange. Although your body is compatible with your soul, it isn't your previous body. Your current body has already begun to fuse with your previous body. This phenomenon has never happened before. Its tone was as cold and emotionless as ever. Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. What did fate do to me? He continued to ask in his mind. It used some kind of power to expel you from the heavenly law universe. Then your body fused with this body without any rejection. The sword spirit's reply made Zhou Xuanji open his eyes wide. Could it be that fate knew of his origins and banished him back to where he came from? Impossible. What kind of power is this? Cold sweat appeared on Zhou Xuanji's forehead. He could not imagine how destiny had done this. Just as he was feeling uneasy and conflicted, a middle-aged woman rushed in. The middle-aged woman was wearing ordinary modern clothes. She was a little fat, and her hair was tied up with a rubber band. Her face was also very ordinary. She was carrying a plastic bag with fruit in it. She put the plastic bag aside. Although her eyes were red, she deliberately kept a straight face. Stinking brat. Do you dare to play games all night again? Isn't it just losing your job? Is there a need to give up on yourself? The middle-aged woman stood by the bed and scolded angrily. Her voice was somewhat sharp. Zhou Xuanji was stunned and looked at her blankly. Wasn't this her mother from her previous life, Su Shu? Was he really beaten back by fate? Su Shu kept scolding him, and in the end, she covered her face and burst into tears. If you die, how am I going to live on? Hearing her sobbing, Zhou Xuanji felt sad for some reason. However, he was an overlord saint after all. He had already experienced life and death, so he quickly calmed down. He asked, "How long have I been hospitalized?" Su Shu wiped away her tears and said, 3 days. The doctor gave me a notice that I was in critical condition. I almost committed suicide to accompany you. She felt incredibly resentful before opening the plastic bag and starting to peel an apple for Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji tightly frowned, still unable to understand his current situation. In front of fate, he could not resist at all. He had thought that he could threaten fate. Fate was so powerful and had countless opportunities to kill him, but it had not done so. Could it be that what fate had said was true, and that Ren Niming was lying to him? The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. Su Shu brought over a chair from nearby and peeled an apple, as she told him about what had happened after he had fallen unconscious. She talked about how worried they had been and how much money they had spent. Zhou Xuanji did not listen to her. If it was his first reincarnation, he might have been incredibly excited. However, he had already lived for 500 years, gotten married, and had children. He had even saved Lady Zhao Xian from the netherworld. He had experienced too many things. Facing the current situation, he only felt a bit emotional. He pulled back the blanket and got off the bed. What are you doing? You just woke up. The doctor said that your limbs will become weak, and you need to rest. Su Shu said hurriedly as she put down the fruit knife and apple. She stretched out her hand, wanting to pull Zhou Xuanji onto the bed, but she found that she could not move him. Zhou Xuanji gave a slight smile and said, "You mom, don't worry, I'm fine." His saint energy was recovering, and even though he was heavily injured, he was still not someone an ordinary person could compare to. Su Shu felt quite startled. She was stunned by Zhou Xuanji's smile. Why did she feel that her son had changed? His facial features were the same as before, but he looked much more handsome. This was especially so for his eyes, which were incredibly bright and full of expression. His entire aura was like a completely different person, giving her an indescribable feeling. Zhou Xuanji walked to the window and looked out. Below were trees and carriages on the side of the street. Looking into the distance, there were tall buildings everywhere. Looking at this city of steel and concrete, he deeply breathed in. "I'm really back," he muttered to himself. He did not feel panicked. As for the 24-ranked deep black lotus, he did not need to worry. Su Shu walked to his side and asked anxiously, "Son, what's wrong? Mom won't scold you anymore, but don't do anything stupid." Zhou Xuanji smirked and looked at her as he said, "It's nothing, I just had a dream. I feel like I've lived an entire life. Now it's time for me to properly show filial respect to you and Dad." Su Shu was once again stunned, not knowing what to say. "Let's go home," Zhou Xuanji said as he smiled. Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. He was suddenly curious about this world. Was this really the world before his reincarnation? How far was this place from the heavenly law universe? Could destiny touch this world? He turned and left, and Su Shu hurriedly packed his things. A while later, after completing the discharge procedures, they walked out of the hospital. Son, are you really okay? Su Shu asked anxiously. She felt that there was something off about Zhou Xuanji. Could it be that there was something wrong with his mind? Zhou Xuanji suddenly looked up. His gaze was locked onto the sun. Su Shu also looked up and was blinded by the sunlight, and she hurriedly closed her eyes and lowered her head. She blinked and looked at Zhou Xuanji, and she found that he was looking at the sun, not looking away at all. Son, what are you looking at? Su Shu hurriedly pulled at him. Looking at the sun with the naked eye could easily cause one to be burned by the ultraviolet rays. Zhou Xuanji did not look down and said softly, as expected, there's something off. What a big bird. Su Shu hurriedly stretched out her hand and turned his face over. Her expression was grim as she pulled Zhou Xuanji towards the hospital. There was definitely something wrong with this boy's mind. Chapter 631. Zhou Xuanji lowered his head and looked at Su Shu as he smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'm fine. Let's go home." After saying that, he broke free from her hand without leaving a trace and strode forward. Su Shu frowned and hesitated for a moment before following him. "Son, you're going the wrong way." "Oh." The mother and son spoke as they turned a corner. On the way, Zhou Xuanji thought about this world. Just then he had sensed the sun's aura. There was a massive bird with decent cultivation hidden within. Could it be the legendary golden crow? In ancient legends, it was recorded that the sun's true form was a three-legged golden crow, and that bird also happened to have 3 legs. Moreover, it had heavenly law true god cultivation. Of course, to Zhou Xuanji, this 3-legged golden crow was not much of a threat. Just like that, he took the bus with Su Shu and returned to his rented apartment. His parents were in another city, and because he had been hospitalized, Su Shu had hurried over. His father was still on the way. "I'll give your dad a call, and tell him not to come so he won't delay his work." Su Shu took out her phone as she walked. Zhou Xuanji looked at the streets around him, and felt that things had remained the same, but the people had changed. Thinking about his previous life, he had been like most ordinary people. He had lived an ordinary life, and there was not much that was worth reminiscing about. He could only vaguely remember the district he had lived in before he reincarnated. His only regret about his previous life was that he had not been able to fulfill his filial duties. Under Su Shu's guidance, he returned to his rented apartment. It had a bedroom, a living room, and a bathroom, and the kitchen was connected to the living room. Su Shu asked Zhou Xuanji to wait for a while before leaving to buy groceries. Zhou Xuanji wandered around the apartment and came to the bedroom. Looking at the slightly messy bedroom, he could not help but shake his head and smile. In his previous life, he had been quite sloppy. His clothes were all over the place, and the things on the table were also quite messy. He sat in front of his computer and started to think about what to do next. Destiny was so powerful, and he had to quickly become stronger. What would he do if fate came for him again? Moreover, he also wanted to investigate why he had come here. He was afraid that this was an illusory divine ability that surpassed his imagination. He opened his laptop and looked on the internet. After opening his laptop, he used his divine sense to look into the internet. As expected, the internet could be searched with divine sense, and it felt like an energy technique legacy scroll. A large amount of information poured into his mind. The current Earth was in an era of information explosion, but this information was not considered much to an overlord saint. Soon Zhou Xuanji absorbed all the information on the network. He eliminated some private and dark information, and slowly opened his eyes. "Looks like I knew too little about this world in my previous life," Zhou Xuanji said in amazement. He had seen too much information. It was far beyond the comprehension of ordinary people. Aliens do exist. The ancient myths were also real. For example, Zeus of Western mythology had once descended on Earth and left behind a palace that had sunk into the deep sea. Sun Wukong of the East was once an ordinary monkey. Later on, he was transformed by the mysterious power underground and became a world-shaking demon monkey. Yang Jian's third eye was also born from a similar force. Most importantly, he saw a plan. The Human Reversion Project. It was almost the middle of the 21st century, and the Earth's environment was deteriorating. Even if they started protecting the environment, it would be too late. Therefore, the various countries secretly planned to use the mysterious power in the depths of the Earth's core to help the Earth return to its ancestral roots. At that time, some ancient existences would be revived, and plants would grow wildly. Once the plan was launched, Earth would undergo earth-shaking changes. Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. He was very interested in that power. It was because of that power that so many myths had appeared. According to scientific research, it was that power that caused the dinosaurs to go extinct, and spirit qi appeared on Earth. Many animals relied on spirit qi to become spirits, and they either hid in cities or escaped into the universe. Afterwards, for some reason, all of the spirit qi was absorbed by the Earth's core, leaving behind only low-quality oxygen for Earth's creatures to survive. Right now, Zhou Xuanji could not go deep underground. He had to recover from his injuries first in order to avoid any complications. Half an hour later, Su Shu returned from buying groceries and cooked 3 small dishes for him. At the dining table, Su Shu continuously asked him if he was feeling unwell. After a series of questions and answers, Su Shu believed that her son's mind was fine, and that he had just lost some of his memories. In the next 2 days, Su Shu stayed with Zhou Xuanji, and after confirming that he was fine, she went back. Before leaving, Zhou Xuanji gave her a massage, treating all of the hidden injuries and pain in her joints. Su Shu thought that her mood had become better, which was why her body had become better. She did not think too much and happily returned to her hometown. After she left, Zhou Xuanji went out and made a bank card. He found a gold shop and looked at the various gold bars and jades before taking out gold bars to sell. Saint Energy could create something from nothing. Although the shop owner was quite confused, he still bought the gold bars. Just like that, Zhou Xuanji earned 400,000 gold bars and left confidently. The shop owner was worried that there was a problem and prepared to investigate in case the gold bars came from unknown sources. Zhou Xuanji did not transfer the money immediately and planned to give it to his parents after some time. To him, money had no value. He did not even need to eat. If he wanted something, he could just conjure it. In the next period of time, he peacefully recovered from his injuries. A month later, his Saint Energy had recovered quite a bit and could open the 24-ranked Deep Black Lotus. The world in the Lotus, the Northern Wilderness region, and the Demon Realm were all safe and sound. Jiang Shui, Zhou Shaoxian, Xian Xianghua, and the others were all cultivating and did not encounter any attacks from destiny. Zhou Xuanji returned to the world in the Lotus and gathered Jiang Shui, Zhou Shaoxian, Xian Xianghua, and Lady Zhaoxian before telling them where he was. When the 4 women found out that Zhou Xuanji had memories from his previous life, they were all very shocked. No wonder you were so smart since you were young. Jiang Shui touched Zhou Xuanji's waist and said with a smile. Zhou Xuanji sensed danger and could only maintain his smile. Lady Zhaoxian muttered, "It seems like Master's fate changing is effective. But that's not right. According to what you said, you were just a mortal in your previous life. How could fate changing cross such a long distance and invite another mortal's soul?" Zhou Xuanji shrugged his shoulders. He would not tell them about the supreme legendary sword system. Zhou Shaoxian held on to Zhou Xuanji and said excitedly, "Father, bring me there to play. I want to see what that world looks like." Jiang Shui and Lady Zhaoxian looked curious too. "Sure. But I have to remind you that the ordinary people here are very weak. You can easily kill them with just a little bit of your aura. You must conceal your aura, especially you." Zhou Xuanji said with a nod. Toward the end, he pinched Zhou Xiaoshuan's cheeks, causing her to cry out in pain. After that, Zhou Xuanji brought them back to his rented apartment. Zhou Xuanji turned on his computer and logged into an online shopping website. "Dress according to the female clothing here," he said. Chapter 632. Jiang Shui, Xian Xianghua, Zhou Shaoxian, and Lady Zhaoxian surrounded the table and began to discuss. After teaching them how to use the mouse, Zhou Xuanji backed off. Looking at the 4 women's novelty in front of the technological products, He burst out laughing. Why is it so short? TSK, is this mortal world's woman so shameless? These pants and short sleeves are too shameful. There are even some with their breasts exposed. Isn't this the look of a brothel? Forget it, let's just leave it at that. Hearing their words, Zhou Xuanji felt quite helpless. This was a clash of cultures. The women of the Wanshan Great Thousand and the Northern Wilderness region were rather conservative. If these words were to be spread on the internet, they would definitely be criticized. But the four girls were not afraid. After that they chose different long skirts and coats. Xian Xianghua even put on a round hat. It had to be said that the combination was very beautiful. The most important thing was that she was extremely beautiful and her skin was fair. She looked good in anything. After changing, Zhou Xuanji brought them to the streets. On the way, they attracted a lot of attention. There were 4 women and 1 man. And the women were all as beautiful as fairies. How could they not attract attention? There were even some busybodies who took photos and shared them in various groups, making up all kinds of jokes. Zhou Xuanji and the others did not mind. And as they walked, Zhou Xuanji told them about the plan to return to the ancestral roots. Xian Xianghua was very interested in the mysterious power underground and wanted to take a look. As for Jiang Shui, Zhou Xiaoxian, and Lady Zhaoxian, they were attracted by the scenery on the street. Not so long ago, Zhou Xuanji had fantasized about bringing his wife and children back to Earth to show them to his parents in his previous life. He had never thought that they would really come back. Then he decided to split up. He brought Xian Xianghua underground to investigate the mysterious power. As for Jiang Shui and the other 2 girls, they continued to stroll around the streets. With their strength, even if they were bombed with nuclear bombs, they would not die, so Zhou Xuanji was not worried. The 2 of them passed through the layers of soil and rocks. I do sense a mysterious power, and it feels somewhat familiar. She enveloped Zhou Xuanji with her magic energy and led him down. After all, Zhou Xuanji had not fully recovered from his injuries, and even with the Holy Light Redemption Sword, he needed time. Perhaps because of the power of destiny, his recovery speed was not very fast, so he could only rely on her for now. Familiar? Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes and once again sent his divine sense downwards. A moment later, his expression suddenly changed. This mysterious power, wasn't this his holy power? What was going on? He instantly thought of many possibilities and felt his hair stand on end. Xian Xianghua glanced at him and said, "Don't think too much about it. After all, your opponent is destiny. It has separated your mana, and it is not impossible for it to travel through time and space." Zhou Xuanji understood this, but he was confused as to why fate wanted to separate his saint energy. The power of the saint state was immortal and inextinguishable. This was also the reason why this mysterious power could be maintained for countless years. As they dove deeper, they actually saw other humans along the way. It was just that their speed was too fast for the other party to notice. "Can you retract this power?" Xian Xianghua asked out of curiosity. She knew that Zhou Xuanji was injured, and if he could withdraw his saint energy, he would be able to recover quickly. Zhou Xuanji muttered, "We'll know after we go down and take a look." Xian Xianghua nodded. The light from the fire shone on her face. Below them was the planet's core. From here, the Earth's core looked like a sun. Lava surged on its surface, and raging flames burned. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. This core was different from the images on the internet. He could already see that his saint energy was about to explode. Once his holy power exploded, Earth would be destroyed. TSK. You want to activate the chance of humans returning to their ancestry? You're really playing with fire. Zhou Xuanji sighed softly. This was the difference in power. The existence of holy power was something that current science could not explain. To the current Earth, it was like the power of God. When the Earth was in danger, they could only rely on this power of God. Unfortunately, humanity had underestimated the power of the one God. Because this is not the power of God. It was even more powerful than the power of the one God. Be careful. Fate might be watching us. Xian Xianghua reminded as she scanned the surroundings. At this point, human machines could no longer approach. Zhou Xuanji's arrival caused the saint energy in the core to boil. as if it was welcoming its owner. He immediately began to absorb the holy power. It was as if a fiery torrent was pouring into his body, causing him to squint his eyes. It felt good to be strong. However, he was still a little hesitant. Should he absorb it all? He still had feelings for Earth. In the end, he decided to keep a portion of the holy power and weaken it at the same time. When humans used it, it would not detonate the Earth. After a while, the two left quickly and flew back to the land. After absorbing the holy power, Zhou Xuanji's injuries were half healed, which made him feel good. It was no wonder that the Holy Light Redemption Sword couldn't heal him quickly. It was all because of fate. The two appeared in the bustling city and merged into the crowd silently. It was the weekend, and the streets were crowded. "This mortal realm is not that good," Xian Xianghua said with curled lips. What she pursued was power. Initially, she was interested in Earth. But after knowing that Earth was powered by Zhou Xuanji's holy power, she lost interest. Zhou Xuanji smiled. "If you don't like it, do you want to go back?" Xian Xianghua snorted. "I don't want to. It's rare that I have time to rest. It's just the two of us. Let's walk around and find them later." After that, she held Zhou Xuanji's arm and smiled like a flower. At the edge of the Milky Way, the space was torn open, and a silhouette appeared. It was Sheng Tiandao. His right arm was missing, and his shoulder was covered in blood. His aura was extremely weak, and his face was pale. "Damn, where is Kunlun Origin Court?" Sheng Tiandao gnashed his teeth and mumbled to himself in frustration. Ever since he left the heavenly law universe, he had never felt at ease. There were dangers everywhere, and even the most powerful heavenly saint was on the verge of a mental breakdown. He took a deep breath and flew ahead. As he flew, he was lost in his memories. He suddenly thought of Zhou Xuanji and sighed again. If Zhou Xuanji did not challenge fate and left the heavenly law universe with him, Zhou Xuanji might not have died, and he would not be so miserable. Damn fate. He cursed furiously and sped up. Along the way, he did not notice that he was being filmed by a flying device. Earth. Zhou Xuanji and the four girls traveled around, and half a year passed before they knew it. He was going to bring Jiang Shui back to meet his parents. As for Xian Xianghua, Zhou Xiaoxian, and Lady Zhao Xian, he would meet them in the future. Or else, his parents on Earth would be scared to death. His experiences were too mysterious, and they would disturb his parents' lives on Earth. Chapter 633. Zhou Xuanji's parents lived in the county. There were not many people in the city during the winter and summer holidays. Walking on the street, Jiang Shui looked left and right, curious about everything. "Xuanji, although this mortal realm doesn't have spiritual qi, and the scenery isn't beautiful, I don't know why, but when I see these, I feel close to them. Is it because of you?" Jiang Shui hugged Zhou Xuanji and asked with a smile. She had a sweet smile on her face and did not look like a mother at all. She did not look like a woman who had lived for more than 500 years. Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes at her and said, "You really know how to suck up." Jiang Shui glared at him. He really doesn't know how to flirt. Following this, Zhou Xuanji swept out with his divine sense, covering the entire city and quickly locking onto Su Shu's figure. She was on the bus from work. When she arrived at her destination, she met Zhou Xuanji and Jiang Shui the moment she got off the bus. "Son, why are you here?" Su Shu was taken aback and asked curiously. She subconsciously glanced at Jiang Shui, and her eyes lit up. What a beautiful lady! She wasn't wearing heavy makeup, and she was even holding her son's arm. Could it be? She immediately became excited. "Mom, this is my girlfriend. Her name is Jiang Shui." Zhou Xuanji smiled as he introduced himself, and Su Shu hurriedly introduced herself. Jiang Shui smiled and said, "Hello, Auntie. Xuanji often mentions you to me." Mystery? Su Shu was briefly stunned, which Jiang Shui immediately realized that something was amiss and explained. "Xianji is the title I gave him. He likes to call himself Xianji on the internet, so he got used to it." Su Shu came to a sudden realization and quickly asked Jiang Shui about it. Some asked about Jiang Shui's background and how she met Zhou Xuanji. Jiang Shui readily accepted his advice and did not reveal any flaws. "All right, Mom, it's time to go back." Zhou Xuanji shook his head and smiled. After that he suddenly looked up. Jiang Shui raised her head as well, causing Su Shu to look up as well. Many meteors streaked across the sky, and one of them was getting bigger and bigger, smashing towards the county they were in. That is, Su Shu's eyes widened as she stood rooted to the spot. This kind of scene that only appeared in sci-fi movies appeared in front of her. How could she not be scared? Ah! A woman's scream came from the side, and the whole street was in chaos. Su Shu came back to her senses, and instinctively grabbed Zhou Xuanji's hand, preparing to escape. She realized that she could not move Zhou Xuanji. He smiled and said, "Mom, don't worry, I'm here." He looked up and saw that the meteorite had instantly turned into ashes and dissipated in the air. Not only that, but all the meteorites that had attacked Earth had disappeared. Su Shu was dumbfounded. She couldn't believe her eyes. She subconsciously rubbed her eyes to make sure that she was not seeing things. What happened? She muttered to herself with a dull expression. The chaotic scene in the surrounding streets told her that she was not hallucinating. Zhou Xuanji looked over. His gaze pierced through the atmosphere and saw the situation in the universe. A ball of raging black flames floated above Earth, revealing only a skull. He looked down at Earth coldly. "What's that?" Jiang Shui asked curiously. She could also see the black flaming skull outside of Earth. Zhou Xuanji's eyes narrowed as he said, "This familiar feeling looks like destiny did not let me off." Everything was too coincidental. He had just woken up not long ago, and the peace on Earth had already been broken? It must be the drive of fate. Su Shu couldn't help but ask, "What are you talking about?" Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "Nothing, let's go home." Su Shu did not give up, and continuously asked questions on the way back. "Son, am I really not seeing things? Why did that meteorite suddenly disappear? And what is this destiny you were talking about? Son, did you hit your head?" Zhou Xuanji felt quite helpless, and did not know how to explain. Jiang Shui kept giggling, and almost laughed out loud. She suddenly felt that Su Shu was quite cute. Su Shu was not even as old as Zhou Xiaoxian. On the other side, above the atmosphere, the black flaming skull was stunned. "What's going on? Why are the meteorites I summoned?" He could not understand what was happening. Could it be that the mysterious power on Earth had awakened? He fell into a moment of hesitation. Should he still attack Earth? At the same time, Earth was in complete chaos. Meteorites appeared all over the world, and nearly 10 billion people saw them clearly. All social media platforms were flooded with traffic. Stars descending from the sky. This is the apocalypse. Why did those meteorites suddenly disappear? Could it be a virtual projection? Looks like I'm not alone. That's too scary. Oh my God. Tell me I'm not dreaming. Why must I take out my transformation artifact? Every nation was discussing this, and the space agencies were in chaos. Zhou Xuanji did not know about any of this. Even if he knew, he would not care. In the entire Earth, he only cared about his parents. Even if the Earth exploded, he would not worry. Xian Xianghua, Zhou Xiaoxian, and Lady Zhaoxian flew out of the atmosphere and surrounded the black flaming skull. This scene was also captured by the satellites of every nation. At this moment, many people almost went crazy. 3 Chinese women were flying? Was this the captain from China who was shocked? TSK, this guy is so ugly. Zhou Xiaoxian spread out her hands in disdain. Xian Xianghua slammed out with her palm and dispersed the black flames, revealing a skeleton, which almost scared him to death. The black flaming skull was almost scared to death. It immediately turned and ran. Xian Xianghua raised her hand and pulled it in front of her, making it unable to move. "Who are you?" Xian Xianghua's voice sounded out in his mind, causing his body to tremble. He hurriedly replied in his mind, "I didn't know that the Earth was protected by powerful experts like you. I'll leave immediately, I was wrong." Xian Xianghua's strength was simply too terrifying, making him tremble. Hearing this, Xian Xianghua gave a peerlessly beautiful smile, instantly stunning him. "So beautiful." Boom! The black flaming skull suddenly exploded and shattered in the universe. The 3 women turned and flew back to Earth, disappearing within the atmosphere, making it impossible for the satellites to capture them. Earth's various space agencies fell silent. It was deathly silent. That day, a hacker stole this video and spread it on the internet, causing the entire world to be in an uproar. The apocalyptic world was in danger, and everyone was in danger. Who are these three women? Are they gods? Oh my God! A mysterious power from the East. So powerful. It's so real. Kudos to the special effects artist. A bunch of idiots, you believe this? I can hire a university student to make a video like this for just $100. It's almost the middle of the 21st century, and you still believe in gods? Within a county town, Zhou Xuanji and Jiang Shui were chatting in a courtyard. Su Shu suddenly rushed out with her phone and called out, "Son, did you see the video in the family group? 3 female deities appeared." 3 female deities? Zhou Xuanji and Jiang Shui looked at each other and laughed. Su Shu rushed over to them and played the video on her phone for them to see. Chapter 634. Fake. It's definitely fake. Zhou Xuanji said as he shook his head, a look of disbelief on his face. Su Shu pouted and pulled Jiang Shui as she asked, "Little Shui, look, does it look real? Does this stinking brat think I've never been to school? This is evidently real." Jiang Shui smiled and said, "Yes, it's real, he's blind." Hearing this, Su Shu felt quite happy and rolled her eyes at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji sent a telepathic message to Xian Xianghua, who was hundreds of kilometers away, asking about the skeleton's origins. Xian Xianghua replied, "I'm not sure, he didn't say. Seeing how weak he is, he should be fine." Her words were filled with disdain towards the skeleton. Zhou Xuanji was speechless and could only turn his attention to Su Shu and chat with her. Su Shu had been young before, and she had worried about the apocalypse. What she had seen today made her feel very excited, but also very afraid. Not too long later, Zhou Xuanji's father, Yang Dabong, returned. He held a plastic bag with both hands and cursed, "The streets are so chaotic, and the owner of the fruit shop wants to close down. He's talking about the apocalypse, what nonsense." They lived in the outskirts of the county town. This was an old 2-story house with a small courtyard in front. There were many houses like this on both sides of the street, and there were small mountains and rivers around them. It looked like a small villa in the outskirts. Yang Dabong walked over to Zhou Xuanji and cursed, "You brat, if you dare to play games all night again, your elder will beat you to death." He turned and smiled at Jiang Shui as he said, "Little Shui, right? Just treat this as your own home. I'll cook something good for you later." He smiled at Su Shu before hurriedly entering the house. Jiang Shui sent a telepathic message to Zhou Xuanji, "Your parents in your previous life were quite interesting." Zhou Xuanji only smiled and did not reply. He was curious about something else. It had only been half an afternoon since Xian Xianghua and the other 2 fought with the skeleton, and there was already a video? The speed was ridiculously fast. Could it be that there were countries behind this? That made sense. After all, the Earth was preparing to start the human ancestral plan. Before that happened, letting the humans know about extraterrestrial creatures and supernatural powers was a good thing. Now that they knew, starting the human ancestral plan would only bring them hope. If the opportunity for humanity to revert to their ancestral roots was suddenly activated, humans who did not know the threat of outer space would oppose it. Zhou Xuanji stopped thinking and pulled Jiang Shui into the house. When he came to the kitchen, he handed the bank card to Su Shu and smiled. "Mom, take this money first." Su Shu was taken aback for a moment before she hurriedly refused. She and Yang Dabong had jobs and were not seriously ill. How could they ask for money for a child? "Please listen to me. I don't need the money, and don't ask where the money came from. I can tell you responsibly that the money came from a legitimate source. Soon the world will change. When the time comes, I will tell you everything. Now, you and Dad should take the money and enjoy yourselves. Don't be frugal. I have as much money as I want." Zhou Xuanji said as he smiled. He used Dao voice to make Su Shu instinctively trust him, and she dumbly accepted the bank card. After he left the kitchen, Su Shu came back to her senses. Why would I believe him? Su Shu mumbled to herself before revealing an excited smile. My son has grown up and knows how to earn money. He even knows how to care for his parents. I didn't raise him for nothing. Then, as she washed the vegetables, she hummed a tune. Zhou Xuanji came to the living room and sat on the sofa, watching television with Jiang Shui. Just as expected, the television station started to broadcast the news that the satellite had captured in the afternoon. They moved so quickly. Yang Dabong cut some fruits and placed them on the table in front of the sofa before starting to chat with Zhou Xuanji about the news on the television. In the past few months, he had discovered many strange things. He had worked in a factory and had seen large snakes that were as thick as bulls and rats that were as big as dogs. Thinking back to what had happened today, he felt quite excited. This is just like the revival of spirit chi I saw when I was young. Could it be that the earth is going to evolve? Yang Dabong said excitedly as he swirled the cup of water. Who hadn't been a chinibyu when they were young? Which man hadn't dreamed of traveling the world with a sword? Jiang Shui smiled and said, "It might be as you guessed." "Is that so? Back when I was in school, I liked to watch the internet, especially Xianxia novels. Back then, I always dreamed of having my own flying sword." Yang Dabong chuckled as he reminisced. Jiang Shui did not know what he was talking about, but she still asked, "What do you like to watch?" Yang Dabang's expression brightened, and he grinned as he said, "For example, Strongest Mythical Emperor and 10,000 Demon Emperor. There are also 2 games that are quite good, called Fatal Game and Super Wild Monsters. Now, I occasionally use my phone to watch them." Speaking of them, Yang Dabong could not stop talking. Zhou Xuanji shook his head, and his memories from his previous life appeared in his mind. It was precisely because of Yang Dabang's influence that he had once fallen in love with an author called Ren Wuxiao, who asked Yang Dabong to be Ren Wuxiao's diehard fan. He had even secretly used the money in his personal treasury to tip Ren Wuxiao to the alliance leader. Su Shu had discovered this, and she was so infuriated that she scolded him for 2 whole days. Time passed so quickly, it was as if those scenes had happened just yesterday. The family became more and more lively as they chatted, and Su Shu came to the living room to chat. She was making soup, and there was still some time before dinner. The meteors falling from the sky and the appearance of 3 female celestials in the atmosphere caused the entire world to be in an uproar. In the following month, these videos were not suppressed by the various countries. No authoritative organization came out to refute the rumors. People all over the world started to believe the authenticity of these videos. Roughly 2 months later, the leaders of various countries held a press conference and announced the Humanity Reversion Plan. At the same time, the various countries all over the world formed an Earth Alliance. They would no longer fight amongst themselves and would share resources and carry out the Humanity Reversion Plan together. This news completely bombarded the entire world. Heavens! I'll be able to see the Earth Alliance in my lifetime? Humanity Reversion Plan? I'm going to become an ape? I don't want to. Idiot, look at the news clearly. It's not a literal reversion. Humans will become stronger, just like Superman in the movies. Superman is too exaggerated. At most, he'll be on the level of Bruce Lee. Why do I feel like it's a sign of the apocalypse? Every country was discussing this matter, and it was incredibly lively. That month, pictures of all kinds of stone steels appeared on various countries' networks. These stone steels came from all over the world, and some even came from the North Pole and South Pole. There were all kinds of ancient words engraved on them, and when translated, there was only one sentence. Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji wants to steal the power of the earth. Descendants, beware. If he succeeds, the earth will collapse. At that moment, the entire world was curious about who the Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji was. Could he be a legendary figure? Chinese netizens felt that the Sword Emperor title was too ridiculous, and that someone had definitely photoshopped it. Sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji? Young people really know how to have fun. I'm Sword God Yang Dabong. Yang Dabong lay on a rocking chair and played with his phone as he laughed. Within the living room, Zhou Xuanji's mouth twitched, and beside him, Jiang Shui could not help but laugh. Chapter 635. After laughing for a while, Jiang Shui reminded Zhou Xuanji, "Even a stone steel like this has appeared. Looks like destiny is preparing something again. You must be careful. Don't let your guard down just because this mortal realm is weak. Zhou Xuanji nodded. He was also wondering why Destiny had set up these stone steels. Trying to incite the humans to deal with him? Impossible. Nearly 10 billion people added up wouldn't even be enough for a slap from him. There must be other intentions. Could it be that they were waiting for the people from the other worlds to arrive and deal with him after learning of this information? That was the only possibility. That wasn't right either. Sword Spirit, are you sure that I have been banished from the heavenly law universe by Destiny? Zhou Xuanji asked in his heart. No matter how powerful Destiny's power was, it could not control the world outside the heavenly law universe. Yes, 100% sure. The Sword Spirit's reply made Zhou Xuanji squint his eyes. Could it be that there was more than one Destiny? The Destiny of the heavenly law universe and the Destiny of the Milky Way galaxy had already colluded? He was lost in thought. At that moment, Su Shu came down from upstairs. She sat beside Zhou Xuanji and asked, "Son, how long are you going to stay at home? Are you really not going to work?" During the day, Zhou Xuanji would travel around the world with Jiang Shui, and at night, they would come back for dinner. Every day, he would bring them all sorts of gifts. In the beginning, Su Shu and Yang Dabong were very happy, but as time went on, they felt that something was wrong. Why did it feel like the two of them were very idle? "Mom, I just want to accompany you. I work for money. I don't lack money." Zhou Xuanji leaned back on the sofa and said casually. Su Shu looked at Jiang Shui suspiciously and asked, "Shui, is your family very rich?" She thought that Zhou Xuanji had found Jiang Shui and felt that he had no worries in his life. Jiang Shui blinked her eyes and said, "I don't have money. I'm the only one left in my family. My parents have passed away." When Su Shu heard this, her heart softened and she changed the topic. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji sensed a familiar aura. He turned around and saw Zhou Xiaoxian appear on the stairs. She poked her head out and looked at them in the living room. Seeing Zhou Xuanji's gaze, she smiled proudly. Zhou Xuanji glared at her and thought about when to let Zhou Xiaoxian meet her parents in her previous life. Perhaps one day he would have to leave. It would be inconvenient for Su Shu and Yang Dabong to leave their modern lives and follow him. Apart from danger, could they endure boredom? In the end, Zhou Xiaoxian still didn't show up. She was probably curious about Su Shu and Yang Dabong, and couldn't help but come to take a look. Another half a month passed. On this day, while the whole world was still discussing the human ancestral reversion plan, the three-legged golden crow in the sun suddenly woke up. In the darkness, a pair of cold eyes lit up. There was a loud bang. The sun exploded, triggering countless fireballs that flew to various parts of the universe. The three-legged golden crow flapped its wings and flew out, raising its head and cawing. Its entire body was burning with raging flames, and its body was like a graceful sparrow. When it spread its wings, they were even larger than the diameter of the sun. Compared to the surrounding stars, the scene was extremely spectacular. Its voice did not reach Earth, but it did not take long for alarms to ring at all the aviation authorities on Earth. The three-legged golden crow scanned its surroundings in the boundless sea of fire, and its gaze soon locked onto Earth. It had been speeding towards Earth at a speed faster than those fireballs. Meanwhile, Zhou Xuanji, who was taking a stroll along the coast of Europe, suddenly looked up. The global temperature began to rise, and huge waves rose up in the ocean, causing the tourists on the beach to hide in panic. "He's finally here," Zhou Xuanji mumbled to himself. Jiang Shui was not worried. Even without Zhou Xuanji, Xian Xianghua could defeat the three-legged golden crow. Xian Xianghua changed into the black robe of the Lord of the Demon Realm. She wore a crown on her head and a black veil over her face as she appeared above Earth's atmosphere. Looking at the unstoppable three-legged golden crow, her eyes were filled with contempt. She did not take the three-legged golden crow seriously at all. "You've grown so big, yet you're only a heavenly law true god. How embarrassing." Xian Xianghua glared and two beams of black light shot out, exterminating divine light, a divine ability from the primordial ancestor. Two beams of black light pierced through the three-legged golden crow's wings at an extremely fast speed, causing it to shriek in pain. Unfortunately, Its voice could not be transmitted in the universe, because there was no spiritual qi in the universe. So sound could not be transmitted in the vacuum. This time Xian Xianghua did not kill the three-legged golden crow. She waved her sleeve and took the three-legged golden crow away. She did not leave immediately. Instead, she stared into the depths of the universe. Countless fireballs were hurtling towards Earth. Her eyes narrowed, and the fireballs all exploded into smoke. She was, after all, a strong practitioner of the reaching heaven state, and her strength was close to that of a saint. After doing all this, she turned and flew toward Earth. Next, Earth began to welcome darkness. The temperature dropped, and the entire world was in an uproar. What's going on? The sun seemed to have exploded. It's so cold. Could it really be the end of the world? Let's go home and turn on the air conditioner. Don't panic, netizens. Remember to turn on the floor heating. I'm poor. I don't have such things when I rent a house. The entire human race was terrified. The various aviation authorities received the images from the satellites and were all dumbfounded. There was a firebird hiding inside the sun. The firebird was terrifyingly huge. Before it, Earth was like a grain of sand. However, such a colossus was easily killed by a black-robed woman. The staff of the various aviation authorities were in a mess. They all contacted their respective leaders. The sun was destroyed, and Earth would face a catastrophe. After all, Earth's environment, gravity, and meteorological changes were all related to the sun. On the beach, looking at the stars in the night sky, Zhou Xuanji shook his head with a smile. He raised his right hand, and a bead flew out from his sleeve and disappeared. Next, it reappeared above Earth and gave off a powerful radiance, illuminating half of Earth. But Earth's temperature was still dropping. Zhou Xuanji slammed his right palm toward the ground. Saint energy enveloped Earth and restored the global temperature to normal. At the same time, he ensured that Earth's rotation speed was maintained. Otherwise, many people would have fainted. I need to interrogate that golden crow, Zhou Xuanji said softly. He then said to Jiang Shui, "You can go back first. If my parents ask, tell them that I'm at a social gathering." Jiang Shui nodded and disappeared. Zhou Xuanji came to Xian Xianghua's side. At this moment, Xian Xianghua was lying on a sofa in a villa. She flipped her right hand, and the golden crow, which was as big as an egg, levitated in her palm. She stared at the golden crow and said with a smile, "This is a rare golden crow. I didn't expect it to be hiding in this mortal realm. Interesting. I wonder who left it here." Zhou Xuanji sat beside her and lay down. He knocked his legs on the tea table and took out the truth sword. He gently pierced the golden crow's body with the tip of the sword. To prevent it from being burned by the golden crow's solar true flame, he enveloped the truth sword with saint energy. "Tell me, why did you appear in the solar system? And who is your master?" Zhou Xuanji asked softly. His tone was calm, but it made the golden crow extremely terrified. Chapter 636. How could this be? Why? The three-legged golden crow roared in its heart. It didn't understand why it was heavily injured as soon as it woke up. As far as it could remember, there were no powerful creatures in this universe. There was no spiritual energy on Earth. So how could it be occupied by other powerhouses? What frightened it the most was that its mouth began to speak uncontrollably. Its language was very strange, but Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xianghua had high cultivations and could understand it with their divine senses. This three-legged golden crow had been in this universe for tens of millions of years. A long time ago, its master, Grey Emperor, brought it to the Milky Way galaxy and discovered that there was a mysterious and powerful force hidden on Earth. Thus, it hid in the sun and waited for Grey Emperor to return. This time, it was suddenly awakened. Before its consciousness was completely clear, it sensed that there were many living beings on Earth and wanted to devour it. Sky Emperor? Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes. He thought of the Flame Emperor somehow. Both of them had a single surname and a single name. Could there be some kind of relationship between them? He immediately asked, "Do you know Flame Emperor and the Kunlun Origin Court?" The three-legged golden crow trembled and replied, "I know the Flame Emperor. He and my master are part of the 13 Void Boundary Emperors. As for the Kunlun Origin Court, I heard my master mention it, but I don't know what it is exactly. As soon as the words left his mouth, all his hopes turned to dust. It was over. Since the other party knew the Flame Emperor, he was definitely an enemy of the Void Boundary 13 Emperors. This brat I sold out master. When master returns, I will definitely die. No, I have to die now. The three-legged golden crow was in despair and almost fainted. Void Boundary 13 Emperors? What is the emptiness realm? Xian Xianghua asked curiously. Her tone was a little excited. The Flame Emperor was an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the heavenly Tao. How powerful would the 13 Void Boundary Emperors be if they joined forces? The three-legged golden crow resisted in his heart, but his body was very honest. He replied, "The void around the Kunlun Origin Court is the Void Boundary. The Void Boundary 13 Emperors are the law enforcers of the Void Boundary. They prevent people from sneaking into the Kunlun Origin Court and prevent people from escaping." Zhou Xuanji and Xian Xianghua looked at each other and understood each other's gaze. If he found the Void Realm, wouldn't he be able to find the Kunlun Origin Court? However, Zhou Xuanji had already offended the Flame Emperor. Now that he captured the three-legged golden crow, he had offended the Sky Emperor as well. If he went to the emptiness realm without permission, he would be consigned to eternal damnation. When is your master coming back? Xian Xianghua continued to ask. The three-legged golden crow almost collapsed. "I beg you, don't ask anymore. I was wrong," it answered truthfully. "I'm not sure. He just came back not long ago. It'll probably take a long time." It was over. This time, they were going to kill Wu to silence him. What do we do with it? Xian Xianghua asked Zhou Xuanji with a murderous look in her eyes. The three-legged golden crow was so scared that he almost fainted. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "Don't kill it. Come to think of it, it's innocent." This almost moved the three-legged golden crow. After that, Zhou Xuanji stored it in the Tianxia map. He frowned and said thoughtfully, "Looks like I have to find a way to become stronger. In order to reach the Kunlun Origin Court, one had to bypass the Void Boundary 13 Emperors. Since they were able to become the Emptiness Realm Enforcers, it meant that there was an even greater force behind them. If he stayed on Earth, Emperor Tsong would definitely come looking for him. If he left Earth, where would he go? Without them, Earth would probably be destroyed. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji suddenly felt that he was in a dilemma. Xian Xianghua understood what he was thinking. She pondered and said, "Let's put the Earth into the 24-stage Deep Black Lotus. With the help of the other three realms, it won't be difficult." Zhou Xuanji thought about it and felt that it was feasible. He still had a lot of feelings for Earth and did not want to see it destroyed just like that. He shook his head and said, "It's not enough to just throw the Earth in. Earthlings are too weak. They have never felt spiritual chi since birth. Moreover, if we do that, it will definitely cause chaos on Earth. Their technology can explore the universe. If humans found out that the universe outside had disappeared, and the Earth was controlled by others, they would surely feel hatred and even fear." Zhou Xuanji understood Earthlings too well. Their minds were active and unconventional. The other mortal realms could not compare to them. Even those from the Great Thousand World might not be as cunning and ambitious as Earthlings. Zhou Xuanji suddenly had a bold idea, which was to put the entire Milky Way into the 24-stage Deep Black Lotus. Earthlings did not know much about the universe outside the Milky Way after all. They could only make guesses. He felt that this was a good idea. He communicated with Xian Xianghua, which made her roll her eyes. How much magic energy would that consume? Aren't you tired? Xian Xianghua said unpleasantly. She could not understand Zhou Xuanji's love for Earth. Even Zhou Xuanji did not put in so much effort when facing the northern wilderness region. Zhou Xuanji smiled and left Earth straight away. He was prepared to fly above the Milky Way. Just when he came to the universe, he suddenly sensed a familiar aura. It was Sheng Tiandao. Why is he here? Zhou Xuanji was confused and immediately flew toward Sheng Tiandao. Sheng Tiandao was resting on a barren planet. He also sensed Zhou Xuanji's aura. He opened his eyes, and Zhou Xuanji appeared before him. "You are still alive?" Sheng Tiandao cried out in surprise. He got up immediately and grabbed Zhou Xuanji's arms excitedly. Ever since he came to the Milky Way, he had been extremely depressed. There was no spiritual chi at all. After he left the heavenly law, his power was greatly reduced. He was no longer in the saint stage, so he did not sense Zhou Xuanji's presence. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Why are you here? Tell me about what happened during this period of time." Sheng Tiandao took a deep breath and told him what happened after Zhou Xuanji disappeared. It turned out that after Zhou Xuanji was banished, the other 3 heavenly saints fled the heavenly law universe out of fear. While they were wandering, they encountered the Water Emperor of the Void Boundary, 13 Emperors. He was lucky enough to escape, but barbarian god Huangluo and Buddha Yangling were captured. For the rest of the journey, Sheng Tiandao encountered countless dangers. There were space-time storms, horrifying beasts hiding in the void, and many unkillable revenants that kept pestering him. After thousands of years, he finally came to the Milky Way. Sheng Tiandao sighed continuously at the mention of his past. He almost cried. Thousands of years. Zhou Xuanji frowned and fell into deep thought. Destiny can change the world? Or is it just that different universes have different times? Sheng Tiandao took a deep breath and said, "The Void Boundary 13 Emperors are too powerful. Don't let the Flame Emperor find you. Once you are captured, the consequences will be unimaginable." Fear appeared in his eyes at the mention of the Void Boundary 13 Emperors. "Is the heavenly law universe destroyed?" Zhou Xuanji asked. He wondered how Ren Niming and the old beggar were doing. Sheng Tiandao shook his head and said, "How can it be destroyed? Without the heavenly law universe, destiny will also be destroyed. It's just that no one knows who will be in charge in the future." Shortly after, he asked about Zhou Xuanji's situation. Zhou Xuanji did not hide anything. After knowing that the Milky Way was the Sky Emperor's territory, Sheng Tiandao panicked immediately. How did he end up in a thief's den? Chapter 637. What are you going to do next? Sheng Tiandao asked. He could only survive by relying on Zhou Xuanji. Or else, if he continued to run around like this, he would collapse sooner or later. Zhou Xuanji told him his plan, which made Sheng Tiandao frown. Such a vast universe. You want to refine it into an enchanted artifact? You must be crazy. Sheng Tiandao said seriously. Although he was no longer a heavenly saint, he was once a saint and knew how much energy it would consume. Although Zhou Xuanji could recover, what if Emperor Tsang attacked him during this period of time? Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "I want to comprehend something. Maybe I can gain some inspiration from this process." Comprehend? Sheng Tiandao's eyes sparkled, but did not ask further. Everyone had their own path of cultivation, so it was not convenient for him to ask. After that, Zhou Xuanji flew up with Sheng Tiandao. The universe was boundless, and there was no end to it. Zhou Xuanji flew for a while, and stopped suddenly. He closed his eyes and spread his divine sense to envelop the entire Milky Way. Sheng Tiandao sat nearby, and continued to cultivate. It would take some time for Zhou Xuanji to integrate the Milky Way. The Milky Way was vast, and Zhou Xuanji could not envelop it with a single thought. A while later, he opened his eyes, and the 24-ranked deep black lotus appeared before his chest. It floated quietly and did not move. He spread out his saint energy and attached it to the lotus with his divine sense. In an instant, the Milky Way's space rippled and covered the entire Milky Way. Instantly, all of Earth's satellites lost their effectiveness. Other than Earth, it was the same for other civilized planets. Earth has been searching for traces of other extraterrestrial civilizations. I didn't expect the Milky Way to have so many of them, and most of them are much more powerful than Earth. Zhou Xuanji found it funny. In the Milky Way, not all civilizations were developing technology. There were some worlds that were similar to cultivation or advanced martial arts. There were all kinds of extraterrestrials. However, these planets were very different from each other. Except for a few civilizations, most of them were developing quietly and did not plunder. He began to focus on integrating the Milky Way. He first compressed the universe of the Milky Way. This process must not affect the inside of the Milky Way. It was an extremely complicated process that had to do with the rules of space. Most cultivators were involved in the way of space. For example, storage rings and storage bags were used by the way of space. Time passed quickly. On the other hand, the Earth Alliance had already sped up the human reversion plan. All the countries shared their resources and created the most sturdy exploratory machine to penetrate deep into the Earth's core. With the extraction of energy from the Earth's core, people all over the world noticed that the air quality was improving. Spiritual energy began to emerge from the ground. It did not come from the core itself, but from Zhou Xuanji's saint energy. Under Zhou Xuanji's control, the saint energy could already be used by humans without exploding. If his holy power were to explode, the entire solar system would be destroyed. After Zhou Xuanji left, Jiang Shui was also asked to leave by Su Shu and Yang Dabong. It was not that they disliked Jiang Shui, but they felt that delaying a young man like this was not a good thing. Jiang Shui didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She could only leave and silently protect them in another city. What was worth mentioning was that Xian Xianghua and the other two had been discovered by the Alliance's intelligence agents. There was no conflict, and the Alliance agents invited them warmly. In the end, Zhou Xiaoxian was invited to Europe to teach the ways of cultivation. Xian Xianghua, Jiang Shui, and Lady Zhaoxian did not stop him. Zhou Xiaoxian was very powerful. Nothing on earth could harm her. Even if they could deceive her, they could not do anything to her. Moreover, Zhou Xuanji did not want to leave Earth. Since Earth was about to recover its spiritual energy, he might as well teach her the ways of cultivation, so that he could provide Emperor Sword Court with endless disciples in the future. A month later, a global live broadcast began. Television stations and tens of thousands of online video platforms all over the world prepared to broadcast the ways of cultivation. The broadcast took place in a forest. Reporters from all over the world were on helicopters, so the cameras were shaky. All the cameras were aimed at Zhou Xiaoxian. She held a sword with one hand, and her white dress fluttered in the wind. She looked like a female sword immortal from the legends. Before she made her move, the reporters from all over the world introduced her in different languages. This is China's reporter Xia Feifei. Let me introduce her first. Her name is Zhou Xiaoxian. She came from another world and stayed on Earth because she loves Earth. London's reporter Mike introduces this female hero from another world. You can even call her God. Red Sun's reporter Nobi Daxiong is broadcasting live for the people. Goria's reporter Song Jiji is at the front line for the people. This female hero from another world, Zhou Xiaoxian, is said to have the bloodline of Goria in her ancestors. She purposely searched for the source of her bloodline and descended to Earth. She will show us her sword techniques that surpass scientific understanding. Citizens of May, watch carefully. Next will be the demonstration of superpower. Zhou Xiaoxuan's appearance will make fantasy come true. She is a true superhero in reality. When the live broadcasts across the world began, the internet and the real world were in an uproar. The comments on those video platforms flooded the screen even more quickly. Zhou Xiaoxian was getting impatient, but she had not received the signal yet, and could not make her move. This was the Alliance's decision. Only after she demonstrated her supernatural powers could all humans devote themselves to the ways of cultivation. The ways of cultivation that she taught had already been printed in large quantities, and was prepared to be included in the textbooks for students all over the world. Because of this, no country dared not to publish the ways of cultivation. If they fell behind, they would be beaten up. No matter how powerful an army was to cultivate, they would not be as powerful as a country of cultivators. At the same time, a war of words was getting more and more intense on the internet. Netizens in Huaxia thought that Zhou Xiaoxian was wearing an ancient Han costume and had a surname, so they went around saying that Zhou Xiaoxian was from Huaxia. Netizens in other countries were not convinced and thought that Zhou Xiaoxian was from the world. A while later, Zhou Xiaoxian raised her sword. In an instant, everyone in the world held their breath. In front of Zhou Xiaoxian was a mountain that was close to 1,000 meters tall. It was surrounded by forests and was far away from the city. The sea of clouds covered the top of the mountain. All the cameras were pointed behind Zhou Xiaoxian, so that they could clearly capture her strength. At this moment, everyone in the world could feel an aura coming from Zhou Xiaoxian. It was indescribable, but it was a shocking aura. She casually slashed with her sword. The sword chi condensed into a beam of white light that was hundreds of meters long. It swept through the air and hit the mountain in front of her. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion was heard, causing many viewers to cover their ears. Many people were so shocked that they trembled and dropped their phones on the ground. The 1,000-meter mountain collapsed with a single slash. Dust billowed and countless rocks were sent flying. The scene was even more spectacular than a volcanic eruption. Zhou Xiaoxuan's white clothes fluttered and soon, her figure was covered in dust. Chapter 638. After the mountain collapsed, the whole world was in an uproar. Zhou Xiaoxian became a goddess in the hearts of billions of people. A human could be as powerful as a legend. She destroyed a 1,000-meter-tall mountain with a single slash. If they were to cultivate too, could they achieve such power? At this moment, the entire human race was in awe, followed by excited fantasies. The elderly in their 70s and 80s, and the children as young as 4 or 5-year-old, were all excited. Could spiritual qi help people live forever? Countless people thought of this question, and all online platforms almost collapsed from the overwhelming traffic. In the villa, Xian Xianghua, Jiang Shui, and Lady Zhao Xian were watching the live stream on the sofa. So majestic, Xian Xianghua said with passionate eyes. Xian Xianghua said with a burning gaze. Clearly, she also wanted to be this glorious. Jiang Shui sighed in amazement. Although cultivation on Earth is not good, such technology is just as exquisite and more practical than enchanted artifacts. Lady Zhao Xian nodded with a smile. Should we choose some talents from Earth to join Emperor Sword Court? Jiang Shui and Xian Xianghua glanced at each other and felt that this was a good suggestion. At the same time, in the live stream, dust exploded, and a violent gale blew, causing the camera to shake. Zhou Xiaoxuan's silhouette was revealed, and the scene looked like a sci-fi movie. After that, Zhou Xiaoxian flew back to the helicopters of the various countries and began to explain what cultivation was. She spoke Chinese. After coming to Earth for so long, she had already learned Chinese. With her cultivation, she could remember it after hearing it once. With a sweep of the internet with her divine will, she could grasp the languages of the various countries. Just like that, Zhou Xiaoxian was named Emperor Sword Goddess by the Earth Alliance. She came up with such a pompous name herself. Half a year later, every country in the world began to promote cultivation techniques. Every bookstore in every city was giving out free copies. This cultivation technique was called the Emperor Sword Heart Technique. Because of Zhou Xiaoxian, the name of Emperor Sword Court spread across the world. Everyone knew about a sanctum called Emperor Sword Court. There were countless powerful cultivators there, and Zhou Xiaoxuan's father was the founder of Emperor Sword Court. His sword techniques were unparalleled. Zhou Xuanji levitated in the starry sky. The Milky Way was before him. It was only a few million miles in diameter, and it looked like a silver vortex. He looked a little tired. Sheng Tiandao sighed in amazement. I wonder what use this universe has for you? Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and said, Nothing. I just like this place. It's pure without spiritual qi. In the heavenly law universe, there was no technological civilization. All living beings were suppressed layer by layer. Above them were the heavenly Tao and destiny. Their thoughts were imprisoned, and they were far from being able to think as freely as those on earth. Sheng Tiandao did not believe him, but there was nothing he could do. He still had to suck up to Zhou Xuanji, and could not offend him. After some time, Zhou Xuanji finally stored the Milky Way into the 24-ranked deep black lotus. After doing all this, the saint energy from the Tianxia map flowed endlessly into Zhou Xuanji's bones and muscles, helping him recover. The reason why heavenly saints could have endless holy power was because of the existence of the heavenly law. Although overlord sages were strong, they could not be like heavenly sages, who had an endless supply of holy power. Fortunately, the Tianxia map had already stored a large amount of holy power. It was enough for him to use for a long time. What's next? Sheng Tiandao asked, his eyes filled with anticipation. He wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "Then let's go. Let's leave this area and find a place with spiritual qi to cultivate for a while." Sheng Tiandao agreed. The two of them quickly flew in the same direction and disappeared into the depths of the universe. They began to wander aimlessly through space. Along the way, Zhou Xuanji would scan Earth within the 24-rank Deep Black Lotus with his divine sense occasionally. Su Shu and Yang Dabong had already begun cultivating. Now everyone in the world was cultivating. Entertainment in various countries began to revolve around cultivation. There were even all kinds of cultivation rankings around the world. The trend of cultivation was getting more and more popular. Zhou Xiaoxian was the proudest. She enjoyed the treatment of an empress. She was served every day, and when she was free, she would go on a lecture tour around the world to motivate the humans. Jiang Shui and Lady Zhaoxian had fun everywhere, while Xian Xianghua studied the heavenly law violet qi in her villa. Her days were quite leisurely. This day, Zhou Xuanji and Sheng Tiandao came to a universe that was filled with abundant spiritual qi. "Is this place far from the void boundary?" Zhou Xuanji asked Sheng Tiandao. They could not go to the void boundary for now, in case they encountered the Flame Emperor. Sheng Tiandao said, "I'm not sure either. I don't know how vast the void boundary is. Let's rest here for a while. Anyway, I didn't sense any danger." Zhou Xuanji nodded. After that, he summoned Qiuhu Si Mingyan and the 4 demon gods to accompany Sheng Tiandao. Seeing Sheng Tiandao, Qiuhu raised his brow and said with a smile, "Yo, Sheng Tiandao, how come your cultivation is similar to mine?" He and Sheng Tiandao were of the same generation. Back then, he did not obtain the heavenly law violet qi and was left far behind by Sheng Tiandao. Sheng Tiandao chuckled and said, "No matter how poor I am, I'm still better than you." Seeing that the two were about to fight, Zhou Xuanji frowned. "If you fight here and attract enemies more powerful than me, just wait for your death. By then, I will surely abandon you and escape." Zhou Xuanji threatened, and Qiuhu scratched his head with a smile. Sheng Tiandao nodded with a smile and sat down with his legs crossed. After that, Zhou Xuanji dived into the Milky Way within the 24-rank Deep Black Lotus. As for the 24-rank Deep Black Lotus, it was held by demon god Nanming. After merging with the Milky Way, the 24-rank Deep Black Lotus had evolved. According to Sheng Tiandao, it was not far from becoming a saint-grade artifact. Zhou Xuanji returned to Earth. Now, with the 24-rank Deep Black Lotus, he could go to any corner of the Milky Way with a single thought, as though he was teleporting. He went back to visit his parents first. Although everyone was cultivating, he still had to go to work. His parents were still working, so he wandered around his hometown. There were more people on the streets than before. It seemed that many people had given up on their dreams of earning money and returned to their hometown to cultivate. The more trees there were, the more abundant spiritual qi there was. The suburbs and villages naturally became livelier. On the other hand, many first-tier and second-tier cities saw a significant decrease in human traffic. Along the way, he saw many people meditating on both sides of the street. It was very interesting. Because of Zhou Xiaoxian, the way of the sword became the mainstream of cultivation on Earth. Iron swords were sharp and were not widely used, but wooden and plastic swords became popular. "Yang Xiaobao, you are finally back." A young man walked over quickly and gave Zhou Xuanji a hug excitedly. "You are?" Zhou Xuanji asked. This young man looked ordinary. His eyes were small, and his skin was a little dark. Zhou Xuanji could not remember who he was. "I'm your high school roommate, Yi Xinglong." The young man chuckled and punched Zhou Xuanji lightly. He continued, "You don't recognize me? That's too much. Back then, we were guarding the garbage dump in the classroom." Chapter 639. Yi Xinglong? Zhou Xuanji felt that it was a little familiar, as though he had heard of it before. Yi Xinglong smiled warmly and said, "At that time, the seats were chosen according to the results. Every time it was our turn, only the last row and the first row were left near the podium. The garbage dump was near the windows at the back, so it became our permanent base." He hissed at the memory of the past. Before they knew it, they were already in their 30s. Time really waited for no man. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, "That period of time is indeed nostalgic." He did not resist Yi Xinglong's attempt to strike up a conversation. He returned to Earth to reminisce about the life of an ordinary person. After that, Yi Xinglong invited Zhou Xuanji to a high school reunion and asked him about his cultivation. He was very low-key, saying that he was only at Qi nurturing level 1. But it was enough to shock Yi Xinglong. Although Earth's spiritual Qi was recovering, it could not become dense all of a sudden. Moreover, everyone's talent for cultivation was different. Even in the northern wilderness region and Wanshan Great Thousand, there were people who were not suited for cultivation. Trash existed in every world. Up until now, the person with the highest cultivation base on Earth was only at the 7th level of the Qi nourishing stage. In this small town, there were not many people who could reach the first level of the Qi nourishing stage. The two of them chatted for a while more before parting ways. Zhou Xuanji walked around the nearby streets and admired his hometown from his previous life. It was almost dinner time when he returned home. When Su Shu and Yang Dabong saw him, they were pleasantly surprised. At the dining table, the family was happy and harmonious. The couple asked Zhou Xuanji where he had been during this period of time. Zhou Xuanji said with a smile, "Recently, spiritual qi has been emerging from the ground, right? I'm one of the first batch of cultivators recruited by the Alliance. My cultivation has already reached qi nurturing level 7, and I'm close to the ranks of the world's top cultivators. So for a period of time, I might be away for a long time. At that time, Xiao Shui will come and visit you." Then, he took out 2 bottles of pills and handed them to his parents, explaining their uses. "Remember, don't tell anyone, especially your relatives. If news of this gets out, I'm afraid I won't be able to see you the next time I come back." Su Shu rolled her eyes and snapped, "Do you really think your mother is stupid?" Yang Dabong picked up the bottle and examined it carefully, as if he had found a treasure. Then the family continued to chat. Su Shu was quite worried that Zhou Xuanji would be in danger, but she was comforted by Zhou Xuanji. He said that his current task was to properly cultivate and teach others how to cultivate. That night was a happy one for Su Shu and Yang Dabong. The next day, Zhou Xuanji left. Because Sheng Tiandao was calling him, he quickly left the Milky Way and the 24-ranked Deep Black Lotus. At this moment, Sheng Tiandao, Si Mengyan, and Xiu Hu were on standby. "What is it?" Zhou Xuanji asked. The 3 of them raised their hands and pointed in the same direction. Zhou Xuanji turned around and frowned. A figure floated in the depths of the universe. It was a woman in red armor. Her hair was disheveled, and a red dragon coiled around her body, silently spewing flames. Zhou Xuanji could not see through the crimson dragon and the lady in red armor. He immediately took out the thunderclap sword and flew over. Sheng Tiandao and the other 2 followed closely behind. All of them were extremely nervous. Because the other party's appearance was too sudden, they were already very vigilant, but they still didn't notice it. "Be careful. This isn't the heavenly law cosmos. There are strange existences everywhere, and it's extremely dangerous." Sheng Tiandao reminded. Back when he was wandering, he was curious and almost died. Zhou Xuanji nodded. He used the sword fusion technique and came up to the red-armored lady. The red dragon tried to bite him, but he caught it with one hand. Not as powerful as I thought. Zhou Xuanji thought to himself with squinted eyes. He scanned the red-armored lady with his divine sense and found that she was severely injured and unconscious. Should I save her? Sheng Tiandao and the other 2 came up to him. TSK. This lady is quite pretty. Save her. Maybe we can find out the whereabouts of Kunlun Origin Court. What if she's the subordinate of the Void Boundary 13 Emperors? The 3 of them spoke one after another. Xiu Hu was the most indecent one. Zhou Xuanji thought for a while and decided to save the red-armored lady. They knew too little about the Void Boundary, and it was too dangerous. He immediately used the Extreme Nightmare Abyss to hypnotize the red dragon, before piercing the Holy Light Redemption sword into the red-armored lady's body. It was not the first time Sheng Tiandao and the other 2 saw this sword, so they were used to it. They looked at the red dragon. This dragon has the cultivation of the saint realm. It seems to be her guardian beast, Sheng Tiandao said with a complicated tone. He was once the most powerful heavenly saint. Even though he was no longer a heavenly saint, his knowledge was still there. This dragon was easy to deal with for Zhou Xuanji, but it was definitely a nightmare for them. After a long while, all of you back off. Zhou Xuanji drew his sword and backed off immediately. Sheng Tiandao and the other two followed suit. The red-armored lady opened her eyes slowly, revealing a pair of bright red eyes. A horrifying aura emanated from her body. She turned around and stood up slowly, which frightened Xiaohu so much that he swallowed his saliva. The red-armored lady looked at Zhou Xuanji and the others. She did not attack, but spoke a language that was hard to understand. It was not ear-piercing, but it dazzled Sheng Tiandao and the other two. But Zhou Xuanji was not affected. What are you trying to say? Zhou Xuanji asked. He realized that he could not decipher the red-armored lady's words. Her voice was somewhat familiar to him. Why does it sound like the Great Dao's voice? The red-armored lady frowned. Her cold expression did not change, but she began to change her language. After a few dozen languages, Zhou Xuanji and the others finally understood her. You saved me. Xiaohu nodded and pointed at Zhou Xuanji. My master is kind. To save you he paid a great price. Do you understand? The red-armored lady looked at Zhou Xuanji and nodded slightly, saying, Overlord Saint Level 1. Not bad. Tell me, what do you want in return? Her eyes were indifferent, like a god looking down on mortals. I want to understand the void boundary and the nearby universe. The universe we are in is already destroyed, so we have to wander, Zhou Xuanji said. The red-armored lady squinted her eyes and said, Void boundary? Seems like you want to go to Kunlun Origin Court? Sheng Tiandao and the other two became anxious immediately. Could the red-armored lady really be the subordinate of the void boundary 13 emperors? It'll be great if we can go, but what we need the most is a peaceful place to cultivate. Zhou Xuanji replied calmly, and did not panic at all. The red-armored lady said, Then follow me. I will bring you to Kunlun Origin Court. Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji and the others were not pleasantly surprised but became alert. May I know who you are? Sheng Tiandao asked. He did not believe that the red-armored lady was really kind. She must be plotting something. Xiaohu and Si Mingyan were prepared to fight at any time. You can call me Empress Red Dragon. The red-armored lady smiled coldly. Just when she finished speaking, Zhou Xuanji and the others quickly backed away from her. Chapter 640. Emperor Red Dragon. The word emperor shocked Zhou Xuanji and the others. After they were far away from Emperor Red Dragon, Xiaohu asked softly, This woman is also one of the void boundary 13 emperors? His heart was about to jump out of his throat. It was too terrifying. I'm not sure. I only know Flame Emperor, Sky Emperor, Water Emperor, Sheng Tiandao replied. Cold sweat covered his forehead. After the battle with the Water Emperor, he deeply understood how horrifying the void boundary 13 emperors were. What should we do now? Si Mingyan asked Zhou Xuanji telepathically. Zhou Xuanji replied, Let's wait and see. She doesn't seem to have any ill intentions. Seeing their panicked expressions, Emperor Red Dragon's lips curled into a devilish smile. Don't worry. I'm not from the void boundary 13 emperors, but I have enmity with them. To be precise, my enemy is from the Kunlun Origin Court. If you want to find the Kunlun Origin Court, you have to work for me. After you enter the Kunlun Origin Court, I will find a peaceful world for you to live in. Emperor Red Dragon said with a soft smile, but her voice was so cold. Zhou Xuanji hesitated. There were pros and cons to this. Putting aside whether Emperor Red Dragon was trustworthy, they would be involved in the fight. Emperor Red Dragon continued. I forgot to tell you that the heavenly law universe is about to be destroyed, and the heavenly law is declining. Now, the void boundary 13 emperors can barge in, and are searching for a pair of eyes. The eyes came from the primordial ancestor. It was said that someone called Zhou Xuanji took it away. It must be one of you. If you continue to flee, you will surely be captured. Only by going to the Kunlun Origin Court will you have a chance of survival. Everyone was shocked. They did not expect Emperor Red Dragon to guess their identities. This time they had no other choice. Okay, Zhou Xuanji said. We will follow you. But I want to ask, are you more powerful, or the Void Boundary 13 Emperors? Did Emperor Red Dragon's injuries come from the Void Boundary 13 Emperors? Humph. Don't worry. You saved my life. I will not let you die. Emperor Red Dragon snorted coldly, as though she was poked in her sore spot. Shortly after, she sat down cross-legged and began healing herself. Sheng Tiandao, Qiu Hu, and Si Mingyan looked at each other in dismay. In the vast starry sky, there was a stone tower quietly sailing. It had a total of 10,000 floors, and every floor imprisoned countless resentful demons. Through the windows, one could see their terrifying figures baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. At the top of the tower, a man sat cross-legged. He had a pair of golden eyes, and his hair was coiled into a red crown. It was Emperor Yan. Zhou Xuanji, where are you? If I find you, I will crush you into pieces and consign you to eternal damnation. Flame Emperor's eyes flickered as he muttered to himself. He had been searching for Zhou Xuanji for thousands of years, but could not find him. This feeling of not being able to find him made him very angry. At this moment, a pillar of water appeared behind him, and a man in a blue robe slowly stepped out. He had a handsome face, and looked to be in his early 30s. He was as elegant as a scholar. Flame Emperor, the primordial ancestor has already been handed over. But the higher-ups aren't satisfied because the most important eye isn't here. If you still can't find it, the higher-ups will probably vent their anger on you. The blue-robed man chuckled, feeling as if he was adding insult to injury. Flame Emperor snorted coldly. Water Emperor, did the two heavenly saints you found provide any clues? The Water Emperor gave a meaningful smile and said, They said that Zhou Xuanji and everyone related to him were banished by destiny. However, he has a teacher who is also from the Kunlun origin court. Perhaps we can start with him. I have already sent people to capture him. Do you want to know who he is? As he spoke, he walked up to Flame Emperor and blocked his sight. Flame Emperor frowned and said, Countless people escaped from Kunlun origin court. How would I know who he is? The Water Emperor mouthed silently to him. Flame Emperor's expression changed drastically. He stood up immediately and roared furiously. So it's him. No wonder he has such a sinful disciple. Capture him. I will use the Soul Source curse against him. Water Emperor smiled sinisterly. That's what I intend to do. Zhou Xuanji came to Empress Red Dragon's side and sat beside her. You are so close to me. Aren't you afraid that I will attack? Empress Red Dragon asked calmly with her eyes closed. Zhou Xuanji glanced at her and asked, Can you tell me the origin of Kunlun Origin Court? He was too curious about Kunlun Origin Court. He also wanted to know about the distribution of universes. It's like a tower. Each level is a universe of different levels. The higher you go, the more powerful you are. Kunlun Origin Court is the top of the tower. The universes below are all born because of it. Kunlun Origin Court is complicated and has strict rules. If you leave Kunlun Origin Court without permission, you will be hunted down. If you enter Kunlun Origin Court without permission, you will be killed too. Empress Red Dragon said casually. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. So all the universes were created by Kunlun Origin Court. Just like how the old beggar and old immortal sped up the process of heavenly law, creating a universe? There are countless universes under Kunlun Origin Court. It can be said to be endless. Living in the universes is actually safer than living in Kunlun Origin Court. But with me protecting you, you don't have to worry. As for other things, you will know when you reach Kunlun Origin Court. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji already had an idea, but he was still curious about many things. How big was Kunlun Origin Court? What were the stages of cultivation inside? But seeing that Empress Red Dragon sounded a little impatient, he did not ask further. When he reached Kunlun Origin Court, he could answer his questions personally. After the thought, he flew back to Sheng Tiandao and the other two. Time passed quickly. 2 years passed quickly. Zhou Xuanji obtained another 5 legendary swords. The highest level was Ancient Gazing. Other sword techniques and enchanted treasures did not appear. During this period, He did not return to the Milky Way, but used his divine sense to check on the situation in the Demon Realm, Northern Wilderness region, and the Lotus World. Xian Xianghua had already returned to the Demon Realm and was working hard on her cultivation, even though the Heaven's Path Violet Aura was no longer of any use to her. Studying it allowed her to comprehend many things. This day, Empress Red Dragon finally opened her eyes. She stood up and said, "Follow me. From now on, you are not to be more than 100 meters away from me, or else you will bear the consequences." The red dragon on her suddenly separated from her and grew to a length of 10,000 meters, allowing her to land on her head. Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji and the others immediately flew up to the back of the dragon's head and maintained a distance of a few dozen meters from her. Empress Red Dragon looked around and quickly chose a direction to control the red dragon. Zhou Xuanji and the others followed closely behind her. Kunlun Origin Court. We are finally here. Qiuhu clenched his fists in excitement. He did not know what Kunlun Origin Court looked like. Sheng Tiandao sighed. I feel that it will be very dangerous. There might be casualties. It was too difficult for all four of them to reach Kunlun Origin Court alive. Zhou Xuanji sat down and said, Wait patiently. Be careful. I can already sense that something is spying on us. Chapter 641. Something was spying on them. Sheng Tiandao, Qiuhu, and Si Mengyan were shocked and looked around anxiously. The starry sky was beautiful and resplendent. Looking around, they could not see any other living beings. Zhou Xuanji did not tell them where it was, because he was not sure either. When the red dragon began to move forward, they could sense a pair of eyes staring at them. Zhou Xuanji was already used to the feeling of being spied on, so he would not be wrong. Don't be alarmed. We are already working toward the void boundary. The surrounding space seems to be unchanged, but the Great Tao's power has already opened up a space-time tunnel. Next, this feeling of being spied on will continue and grow more intense. Emperor Red Dragon's voice came, which made the four even more curious. Great Tao's power? Space-time tunnel? Qiuhu, Si Mengyan, and Sheng Tiandao opened their eyes wide in astonishment. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. There's Great Tao's power around? He immediately calmed his mind and began to sense the Great Tao around him. Soon he sensed the existence of the Great Tao. I knew it. Zhou Xuanji felt delighted. Within the range of his divine sense, an invisible passageway appeared around him. It twisted and turned, and was quite wide, looking like a long dragon. Compared to the red dragon that was tens of thousands of meters long, it was much larger. He would build a bridge with his divine will, and connect with it with his Tao will. Boom! Zhou Xuanji felt an explosion in his mind, and he fell into a mystical state. Sheng Tiandao and the other two turned to look at him. They tried their best to remain calm, but their hearts were filled with astonishment. How could he be enlightened like this? Emperor Red Dragon turned back to look at Zhou Xuanji. Her gaze was subtle and thoughtful. Her gaze made Sheng Tiandao and the other two anxious. They were afraid that she would interrupt Zhou Xuanji. Now Zhou Xuanji was their only hope of survival. They did not want anything to happen to him. The fusion of Tao wills made Zhou Xuanji forget everything around him. It was as though his soul had drifted out of the universe. It was a wondrous and indescribable feeling. Sometime later, Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes slowly. A pair of mountain-like dragon horns, and Emperor Red Dragon's silhouette appeared before him. The wonders of Tao are unfathomable. Zhou Xuanji sighed in his heart. Just like that, his Tao will grow many times stronger. Qiuhu transmitted his voice and asked, You're finally awake. You closed your eyes for half a year. I thought you would continue. Half a year? Zhou Xuanji was a little dazed. He felt that it was only an instant. Not bad. You're only a level 1 Overlord Saint, yet you're able to touch the level of the Great Tao. It seems like you're really a genius. No wonder the primordial ancestor gave you those eyes. Empress Red Dragon's voice floated over, her tone full of praise. Zhou Xuanji asked, Are there many people who comprehend the Great Tao in the Kunlun Origin Court? Sheng Tiandao, Qiuhu and Si Mengyan turned to look. They were very curious about the Great Tao, but they were too embarrassed to ask. Facing Emperor Red Dragon, They could not be as casual and bold as Zhou Xuanji. Of course there are many, but there are very few who have truly grasped the Great Tao. If one can completely grasp a Great Tao, their status in the Kunlun Origin Court will rise accordingly. Emperor Red Dragon's reply made Zhou Xuanji look forward to the Kunlun Origin Court even more. He hoped to exchange pointers with more experts, so that he could become stronger. We have already reached the emptiness realm. Get ready to fight at any time. The Water Emperor has locked onto us. Emperor Red Dragon's words made everyone nervous. Zhou Xuanji was not too nervous, but began to savor the Great Tao. After a while, the Red Dragon stopped suddenly, and the surrounding tunnel disappeared. Emperor Red Dragon, you have brought the wrong people. Hand them to me, and I will let you live. Or else, you will not be able to return to the Kunlun Origin Court. The Water Emperor's voice came from the front. His tone was filled with a cold smile. Emperor Red Dragon stood up and snorted coldly. Trash like you wants to stop me? She raised her arms, and countless red lotuses appeared behind her. They were like waves of fire, and quickly formed into a gigantic flaming lotus. It was bewitching and filled with danger. Zhou Xuanji scanned the Water Emperor with his divine sense, and captured him. In his divine sense, he could see that the Water Emperor was enveloped in a powerful Tao will. The Water Emperor's Tao will was blue, which was different from his. His Tao will had yet to form, which showed the difference between them. Emperor Red Dragon, don't you understand who we are working for? The Water Emperor's face turned dark as he spoke with a murderous aura. He did not have a good impression of Emperor Red Dragon, because they had fought before. The fact that Emperor Red Dragon could still escape under the joint attack of several Void Boundary Emperors showed how powerful she was. Facing the Water Emperor's threat, Emperor Red Dragon laughed in disdain. The flaming lotus behind her suddenly exploded into countless petals that shot toward the Water Emperor. The Red Dragon under her feet charged forward with unstoppable momentum. The Water Emperor exploded immediately, turning into countless water droplets that flew in all directions. Emperor Red Dragon, just you wait. If I let you return to the Kunlun Origin Court, I will resign from my position as one of the 13 Void Boundary Emperors. The Water Emperor's voice resounded across the starry sky. He was suppressing his anger. Emperor Red Dragon snorted coldly and continued forward. Zhou Xuanji sensed the space-time tunnel formed by the Great Tao appear again. The Red Dragon continued forward at full speed. Next, I will hand you over to a senior. You must obey him completely. After we enter the Kunlun Origin Court's Universe Pass, I will pick you up. Emperor Red Dragon's voice came into everyone's ears, which made them frown. This was different from what they had agreed on. Qiuhu could not help but ask, can you guarantee that Senior won't harm us? Emperor Red Dragon snorted coldly. No, but if you follow me, I might abandon you. I can't risk my life to protect you. You should understand this. If you follow that Senior, your chances of survival will be higher. Her tone was very bad, scaring Qiuhu so much that he didn't dare to say anything. Zhou Xuanji did not say anything. Right now they did not have the right to choose. As the four of them waited anxiously, they arrived at another universe filled with silver light. There were no stars in the surroundings, only countless silver flowers that refracted beams of silver light. The spirit chi here was very thin, close to the Milky Way's spirit chi. A huge silver tree appeared in front of them. It had countless branches, and all the silver flowers in the universe originated from this tree. The Crimson Dragon was very fast, and quickly arrived in front of the huge silver tree. Zhou Xuanji saw an elder lying on a tree branch. He could see him because this elder was wearing a rainbow-colored dazzling robe. He was 3,000 meters tall, and was quite eye-catching on the tree. Signorine Xian, I need your help. Emperor Red Dragon said with a respectful tone. This elder was called Old Ancestor Inshin. His power surpassed the Void Boundary 13 Emperors. Along the way, Emperor Red Dragon warned them many times not to anger Old Ancestor Inshin. Old Ancestor Inshin controlled hundreds of universes, and each of them was bigger than the Milky Way. He was like the ruler of the universe, controlling everything in this silver flower universe. Chapter 642. On the giant tree, Patriarch Inshin opened his eyes and glanced at Emperor Red Dragon. He said nonchalantly, "Little girl, I may be on good terms with your grandfather, but I can't be ordered around by you." Empress Red Dragon frowned and fell silent. At this moment, old ancestor Inshin glanced at Zhou Xuanji and the others. He sat up suddenly. "That kid over there, come here." Old ancestor Inshin pointed at Zhou Xuanji, and a formless force dragged Zhou Xuanji into his right palm in the blink of an eye. At that moment, Zhou Xuanji felt as if he was Sun Wukong, and he was being held by Buddha Tathagata. He did not resist because the difference in strength between him and the enemy was too great. Old ancestor Inshin sized Zhou Xuanji up with glowing eyes. Sheng Tiandao, Qiu Hu, and Si Mengyan were all worried for him. Empress Red Dragon smiled mysteriously. "Okay, little girl, you can go now. I will do my best to send them to the Kunlun Origin Court," old ancestor Inshin said, staring at Zhou Xuanji. Empress Red Dragon immediately teleported Sheng Tiandao and the other two away, and left quickly on the Red Dragon. In the blink of an eye they were gone. The Silver Flower universe fell into silence. Old ancestor Inshin's gaze was extremely invasive. Zhou Xuanji pretended to be afraid and lowered his head. After a long while, "Kid, there's a mysterious and powerful force hidden in your body. What is it?" Old ancestor Inshin asked with a mocking smile. Zhou Xuanji pretended not to know. He really did not know. Was it his eyes? Or the supreme legendary sword system? Old ancestor Inshin looked down at Zhou Xuanji and said, "Follow me. I will send you to Kunlun Origin Court. But Kunlun Origin Court is not as good as you think. It might even be hell." His words gave Sheng Tiandao, Qiu Hu and Si Mengyan a bad feeling. Ever since they left the Heavenly Law universe, all the news they heard about the Kunlun Origin Court was bad. Even Empress Red Dragon said that the Kunlun Origin Court wasn't as beautiful as they thought. Was the Kunlun Origin Court really not a good place? "Senior, can you tell us about the Kunlun Origin Court?" Zhou Xuanji looked up and asked. Since old ancestor Inshin had no ill intentions, then he should take the initiative. The more they understood the Kunlun Origin Court, the more confident they would be. Old ancestor Inshin chuckled and said, "I can't say that. The words of the Supremes are the law. Anyone who dares to reveal the existence of the Kunlun Origin Court will be punished by heaven and earth." Supremacy? Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. Could the sovereign be the supreme ruler of the Kunlun Origin Court? "I'm going to concoct pills. After I'm done concocting pills, I'll bring you to the Kunlun Origin Court. During this time, you can wander around this universe." Old ancestor Inshin waved his right hand and sent Zhou Xuanji out. He then turned into a stream of silver light and disappeared into the giant tree. Qiu Hu immediately hugged Zhou Xuanji to steady him. Sheng Tiandao and Si Mengyan followed suit. They began to communicate via voice transmission. "I can't help but feel like there's something fishy going on. That old man must have his eyes on the thing in your body. What should we do? Is he testing us on purpose? Isn't he afraid that we'll run away? Damn it, I shouldn't have saved that woman. Sigh, we can only take it one step at a time." Hearing their discussions, Zhou Xuanji did not say anything, but he was thinking about this in his heart. All of them were old demons who had lived for countless years. How could they not see the clues? Old ancestor Inshin must have a motive for taking them in. It was definitely not because of Emperor Red Dragon. Most importantly, they did not hear the discussion between Emperor Red Dragon and old ancestor Inshin. Could it be that they also used some kind of sound transmission technique to communicate? They could not figure it out, so they could only give up. Zhou Xuanji asked Qiu Hu to hold on to the 24-ranked deep black lotus while he entered it to check on the situation in the other realms. For some reason, he had a feeling of unease, as though he would die at any moment. So he wanted to see his family more. He came to the demon realm and found that Xian Xianghua was cultivating. The demon realm was considered peaceful. Looking at her peaceful face, Zhou Xuanji could not bear to disturb her. He came to earth again and saw that Zhou Shaoxian, Jiang Shui, Lady Zhaoxian Su Shu, and Yang Dabong were all living happily. He did not dare to appear before them. If it was in the past, he might have told Jiang Shui about his situation. But now he could not. It was not easy for everything to return to peace. How could he disrupt it again? Finally, he came to Emperor Sword Court in the Lotus Realm. He saw that Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Congjian, Huang Lianxin, Bei Xiao Wangjian, and the others were all training hard, and he could not help but smile. Great! All of this is great! He regained his fighting spirit and returned to the Silver Flower universe straight away. Qiu Hu returned the 24-rank Deep Black Lotus to Zhou Xuanji and asked, "You are back so soon?" Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "I just need to go back and take a look." He stored the 24-rank Deep Black Lotus into his body. "What I envy the most about you is not your power or talent, but the fact that you have so many people around you who you care about and protect," Qiu Hu said faintly. He who was always carefree rarely showed a sorrowful expression. Si Mingyan said with a smile, "Yeah, I've lived for so long and had wives, concubines, love, and children, but it's a pity that I abandoned them all. Back then, I was determined to become more powerful. But now, I regret it and can only smile bitterly." Sheng Tiandao said with disdain, "The path of a powerful cultivator has always been lonely. Forcefully bringing along the people you care about will only put them in a desperate situation." Zhou Xuanji listened to their conversation and could not help but laugh. Different people had different daos, which could be fully reflected at this moment. He should not be hesitant. He should move forward with determination. He should not be hesitant or lost. "Okay, I need to continue my Dao enlightenment. I hope that we can enter the Kunlun origin court together," Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. After that, he sat down and closed his eyes. The other three spread out and did not disturb him. Zhou Xuanji quickly entered the state of Dao will. A while later, he was pleasantly surprised. He realized that the barren Silver Flower universe was filled with a great Dao that was even more profound than the Heavenly Law universe. If not for his previous enlightenment in the space-time tunnel, he would not have noticed it. This great Dao was deeply hidden and was silver in color. He tried to use his Dao will to contact it, but was repelled again and again. He did not give up and continued to try. Time passed just like that. After 3 months, he still did not succeed. Fortunately, he was calm and did not panic. This day, old ancestor Inshin suddenly appeared on a tree branch. There was a silver cauldron in front of him that was as tall as him. "That brat, come here," he shouted. Zhou Xuanji, who was in the state of Dao will, was awakened and was immediately pulled over. Sheng Tiandao, Qiu Hu, and Si Mingyan stood up and looked over anxiously, fearing that something might happen to Zhou Xuanji. Old ancestor Inshin chuckled. "I made a pill. Help me try it." Zhou Xuanji heard him and was shocked. "I knew it. This old brat was waiting here. Can I refuse?" he asked. Chapter 643. Do you think you can refuse? Old ancestor Inshin looked down at Zhou Xuanji and asked with a smile. His eyes were curved into 2 lines, like a cunning fox. The threat was evident in his words. "Where's the pill?" Zhou Xuanji asked. Old ancestor Inshin lifted his hand and placed him on the top of the cauldron. Zhou Xuanji looked down and was shocked. He saw a gigantic pill with a diameter of 1,500 meters lying in the cauldron. It was silver in color and had many colorful patterns on its surface. "Damn, I'll die from eating this." Even as an overlord saint, Zhou Xuanji could sense the immense energy within. He looked at old ancestor Inshin and asked, "If you want me to die, just say it." Sheng Tiandao, Qiu Hu and Si Mingyan flew up and looked down. Their expressions changed drastically as well. "So big, don't worry. I will not harm you. This might be your serendipity. Don't you want to try?" Old ancestor Inshin snorted and looked as though Zhou Xuanji should be thanking him. Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and immediately used his Dao will. He enveloped the gigantic silver pill with his saint energy and compressed it with his Dao will. Old ancestor Inshin nodded in satisfaction and praised. "Your understanding of the great Dao has already taken shape, and you can even use it simply. Impressive." Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes and was not very happy. He focused on the gigantic silver pill. Soon, it shrunk to the size of a pellet and flew into his hand. He put the silver pill near his mouth and hesitated again. I won't die from overeating, right? Don't worry. If you die, I will save you. I will also protect your enchanted artifact that contains the universe. Old ancestor Inshin urged impatiently. Zhou Xuanji could only swallow the silver pill. Boom! A violent impact tore his white robe apart. The entire tree shook, and Qiu Hu and the other two were sent flying backward. They vomited blood and almost fainted. Old ancestor Inshin looked excited and mumbled. You didn't explode and die. Overlord Saint indeed. Very good. Very good. Zhou Xuanji felt that his body was about to explode. The indescribable pain twisted his face, and his body expanded exaggeratedly. He immediately used the 9-soul fusion technique, and the sword fusion technique, and the strength of his body instantly increased. Old ancestor Inshin's smile disappeared. He frowned and looked at Zhou Xuanji carefully. A berserk energy rampaged in Zhou Xuanji's body. He activated world internalization to absorb this energy. Just like that, his body began to transform. All the meridians in his body were under attack, constantly breaking and regenerating. Old ancestor Inshin waved his right hand and threw Zhou Xuanji into the giant cauldron. Qiu Hu grew anxious and said angrily, You want to refine him into medicine? Patriarch Inshin turned around and glared at him. I like refining elixirs, but I don't like eating elixirs. Why would I refine him? I said that I would take you to the Kunlun origin court, so I won't go back on my word. Qiu Hu could only give up. Old ancestor Inshin sat in front of the cauldron and waited quietly. Qiu Hu, Sheng Tiandao, and Si Mengyan also meditated, but they couldn't focus on cultivating. After a long while, a voice resounded throughout the Silver Flower universe. Signorine Xian, can we come in and search? This voice belonged to the Flame Emperor, startling Qiu Hu and the others awake. The Void Boundary 13 Emperors chased them all the way here. Humph, I'm busy. Go search somewhere else. Old ancestor Inshin snorted angrily. He didn't care about the Flame Emperor at all. After that, the Flame Emperor's voice did not come again. So domineering, Qiu Hu mumbled. He heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that old ancestor Inshin could protect them for now. Sheng Tiandao said with a frown. I have a bad feeling about this. Si Mingyan nodded. They felt that the Void Boundary 13 Emperors might be planning something since they didn't retreat. At this moment, old ancestor Inshin stood up and took out a giant silver cover to cover the cauldron. He then carried the cauldron on his shoulder. You three, come over here and land on my shoulder. Get ready to run. Old ancestor Inshin shouted. The three came back to their senses and quickly landed on his shoulder. Shortly after, old ancestor Inshin tore open the dimension and stepped into it. Not long after he left, several figures appeared out of thin air in the Silver Flower universe. Among them were the Flame Emperor and the Water Emperor. He escaped. As expected, there's something wrong with this old thing. He would definitely attack us when we investigate him. He has a good relationship with the Sacred Red Divine Range. He will surely help Emperor Red Dragon. Chase. We can't let Zhou Xuanji escape. After a brief conversation, they tore open the dimension and chased after Zhou Xuanji. At the same time, old ancestor Inshin sped through the space-time tunnel. Sheng Tiandao and the other two stood on his shoulder and looked back from time to time, fearing that the Void Boundary 13 Emperors would catch up. Senior, are you afraid of the Void Boundary 13 Emperors? Qiu Hu asked. Si Mingyan glared at him. Is this stupid tiger courting death? Humph. Why would I be afraid? It's just that the forces behind them are powerful in the Kunlun origin court. I have to reduce the trouble, understand? Old ancestor Inshin replied unpleasantly. He really wanted to throw Qiu Hu out. Sheng Tiandao frowned. So, entering the Kunlun origin court was equivalent to entering the enemy's base camp? Suddenly, countless souls appeared in front of them and attacked them like a storm. Old ancestor Inshin's body radiated with a silver radiance to defend against these souls. When the souls collided with him, their souls would scatter and dissipate into space and time. What's this? Qiu Hu cried out in shock. Even he felt a chill down his spine when he saw so many souls. These souls had different expressions. Some were in pain, some were excited, some were sad, and some were laughing wildly or crying. They were like the epitome of all living beings. Those who are eliminated from the Kunlun origin court, their souls will flow into different universes through the space-time tunnel. That's how you guys were born. Old ancestor Inshin replied, which made the three even more horrified. They came from the Kunlun origin court? Will those souls that you destroyed resurrect? Si Mengyan asked. He looked around and felt sad for some reason. Old ancestor Inshin chuckled. Of course not. This is their weakest moment. The Kunlun origin court has plenty of souls. You guys have to work hard in the future, or else this will be your end. The three's expressions changed. Could there be some kind of test in the Kunlun origin court? Otherwise, why would old ancestor Inshin call them eliminated? Soon, the torrent of souls disappeared, and there was nothing in front of them. But a horrifying murderous aura came from behind, and they looked back in shock. They saw the Flame Emperor, the Water Emperor, and the others rushing over. Xiaohu counted. There were 10 of them in total. His eyelids twitched and he shouted, "Senior, faster." Old ancestor Inshin scolded. You think I don't want to? Do you know how heavy my cauldron is? It's enough to crush a universe. Even so, he started to speed up. Senior Inshin, you're playing with fire. The Flame Emperor's cold voice was filled with murderous aura. Chapter 644. Hearing Emperor Yan's threat, old ancestor Inshin lowered his head and roared. Little bastard! You dare to say that I, your ancestor, am playing with fire? Do you believe that I, your ancestor, will kill you? How could he allow the Flame Emperor to tell him what to do? The Flame Emperor didn't reply, but the 10 Void Boundary Emperors were still chasing. When I, your ancestor, arrive at the Kunlun origin court, the next time I come out, you will all die. If it wasn't for the fact that my cauldron is still brewing, your souls would have already been destroyed. Accept your fear. Old ancestor Inshin cursed as he flew at full speed. Xiaohu felt his scalp go numb as he shouted, Senior, don't provoke them again. Sheng Tiandao and Si Mingyan were terrified as well. They wished they could cover ancestor Inshin's face with a piece of dirty cloth. Unfortunately, they were not strong enough. The two sides continued to be deadlocked. About the time it took for an incense stick to burn had passed. Old ancestor Inshin opened his mouth, and a gust of strong silver wind gushed out from his mouth. It expanded rapidly, as if the Milky Way had fallen down and occupied the entire space-time tunnel. It was a spectacular scene. The expressions of the 10 Void Boundary Emperors changed drastically. They subconsciously wanted to dodge, but they were still drowned by the Silver River. Will they die? Xiaohu asked excitedly. Old ancestor Inshin had shocked everyone the moment he made a move. The Milky Way just now had a great momentum, and was obviously very powerful. Elder Inshin answered. No, but we can keep them there to buy us some time. Xiaohu curled his lips in disappointment. Was old ancestor Inshin considered strong compared to the 13 Void Boundary Emperors? He suddenly lost his sense of security, and felt that it was inappropriate for him to follow Elder Inshin. This old thing might abandon them at any time. Old ancestor Inshin continued to lead them forward, as if there was no end in sight. Gradually, Xiaohu, Sheng Tiandao, and Si Mingyan felt their eyelids grow heavier. An indescribable exhaustion washed over them like a tide, causing them to feel extremely exhausted. After an unknown period of time, they finally fell into a deep slumber. Xiaohu felt himself fall to the ground. He opened his eyes in a daze and found that he was surrounded by fire. He opened his eyes wide, and immediately got up. His consciousness was clear. He instinctively looked around and found Sheng Tiandao and Si Mingyan lying beside them. Not far away, Zhou Xuanji was also meditating. What's going on? This is... Xiaohu held his forehead and gritted his teeth. Zhou Xuanji's voice came. You guys were thrown into the cauldron too. Xiaohu heard him and was stunned. He looked at Zhou Xuanji and asked, What do you mean? He wants to refine us. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes. His violet pupils were extremely bright, as though they were devilish. I'm not sure, but it shouldn't be what you think. Otherwise we would have been burned to death. His answer made Xiaohu heave a sigh of relief. Next, Qiuhu woke up Sheng Tiandao and Si Mingyan. They started to call old ancestor Inxin, but there was no reply. They could only focus on Zhou Xuanji. Are you alright? Si Mingyan asked with concern. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, very good. I have broken through to Overlord Saint Level 3. Overlord Saint Level 3. Sheng Tiandao, Qiuhu, and Si Mingyan widened their eyes in shock. How long has it been? Is that pill really that magical? Sheng Tiandao asked enviously. He, who had fallen from the Saint Plane, was extremely eager to return to the Saint Plane. Zhou Xuanji replied honestly. It's magical indeed, but we don't know the disadvantages yet. There's no free lunch in the world. Old ancestor Inxin asked him to test the pill, not to help him improve his cultivation. His body was evolving toward a more powerful level, but his heart was always tense. He always felt that his body would collapse at any moment. This feeling made him very uncomfortable. So he was not surprised at all but worried instead. What should we do next? Si Mingyan asked. He looked around and saw nothing but flames. There were no other living beings or mountains. It was just a boundless plain. Let's wait, Zhou Xuanji muttered. We can't escape anyway. He closed his eyes and continued to study his body. He did not want anything to happen to him. Old ancestor Inxin galloped in the boundless void. There were no stars here, only turbid fog. He carried the giant cauldron on his back and scanned his surroundings as he traveled, keeping an eye out for enemies. We're finally here. Those guys are really troublesome. Old ancestor Inxin mumbled to himself with a proud smile. You want to hunt me down? You are too naive. He continued ahead. After a while, a purple line appeared in the deep void ahead of him. As he got closer, the purple line grew bigger. It was a beam of purple light with no end in sight, as though it had split the void into two. Old ancestor Inxin, who was thousands of meters tall, looked extremely tiny before this beam of purple light, like an ant before the sun. He dived into the purple light and traveled forward at full speed. Countless lightning bolts weaved around his body. Boom! A gigantic palm came from the front and slammed into old ancestor Inxin, sending him flying away. Old ancestor Inxin returned to the void. He shook his head and cursed with gritted teeth. Who is it? As the voice faded, a burly figure slowly stepped out of the purple light. He was 1,000,000 feet tall, and he wore black scaled armor. He had 12 wings on his back, 3 pairs of wings, and 3 pairs of black wings that were as sharp as blades. He wore a black iron mask that only revealed his eyes. His pupils were blood red, and he looked like a war god from the depths of chaos. Once he stepped out, the billowing clouds in the void stopped. Seeing him, old ancestor Inxin's expression changed drastically. Void boundary god, what are you trying to do? Old ancestor Inxin shouted in a deep voice. The void boundary god was very powerful. The void boundary 13 emperors were his guards. Hand over the pair of eyes. The primordial ancestor has been captured. If you insist on acting recklessly, we will take away all the universes under your control and throw you into the deep universe hell for 10 billion years. The void boundary god shouted, his voice causing old ancestor Inxin's robe to flutter. Old ancestor Inxin did not panic. He flipped his right hand, and a golden arrow appeared in his hand. I have the golden venerable arrow. Are you sure you want to stop me? The void boundary god's blood-red pupil shrank, and he fell into silence. Old ancestor Inxin raised his head and laughed proudly. You know who wants me to go back. If you dare to stop me, the consequences will be unimaginable. The void boundary god snorted and made way. Old ancestor Inxin flew away with the giant cauldron on his back. When he passed by, he looked down at him with his head held high. Soon, he disappeared into the depths of the purple light. The void boundary god looked in the direction he left and remained silent. After a while, he took out a piece of black paper, used his left index finger as a pen, and wrote on it. Old ancestor Inxin, that pair of eyes is not something you can covet. Even that existence covets those eyes. Just wait for your death. The void boundary god mumbled to himself. The void boundary god muttered to himself, his eyes burning with blood-red flames. After that he turned around and flew into the void. He did not return to the Kunlun origin court. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.